The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Hey guys, this is Matt Seidel, and you're listening to Keepin' It Strong Style.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin' It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin' It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out in Barrio the Frogs. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the Ace of Podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, we'll review nights 7 through 10 of G1 Climax 33 and cover all latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Please support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get the podcast over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, ProWrestlingTees.com/Social Suplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and clicking on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. This week's episode is brought to you by the NJPWEXT, the only browser extension for NJPWWorld.com. Frequently updated and features like dark mode, improved translations and layouts, custom and share plus, synchronized viewing parties, and much, much more. It takes NJPW World to the next level. You can visit njpwext.us today for details. Young boy, we are once again wrestling trivia champions of the world.
Oh yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's correct. In fact, there has never been any wrestling trivia contest that I've entered that I've ever lost.
That's true.
Not just including bar trivia, but also including the lofty and lauded Ricky and Clive Quiz Time Invitational Championship Showdown, which I was the winner of and sole champion.
Yeah.
Still reigning to this day.
But yeah, we went down to Escape Brewing last Thursday. Me, you, and some other members of the Largo Loop. And man, we mopped the floor with 13 other teams.
Yeah.
Too easy.
And we destroyed everybody there. It was not really fair at all. To have a bunch of wrestling buffs just show up to these people's trivia night. But we caught wind that there was a wrestling themed trivia night. We showed up and it was embarrassingly bad. Like, I think the next two closest teams were probably like 10 to 15 points behind us when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
And it was all WWE trivia specifically.
Yeah. /WWF. Yeah.
/NWA/WCW, because the guy running the quiz didn't know the difference between the two.
Well,
and he made it.
Vince owns it all. It's all.
He made it clear at the beginning. He was like, "This will be WWF and WWE only." But then he started throwing in stuff about the Four Horsemen and the Rock and Roll Express, and I'm like, "That's not." I mean, yeah, they had a little run in 98, 93, but I don't know. I don't know if when I think of classic WWF trivia, I think of the Rock and Roll Express. And I definitely don't think of the Four Horsemen.
Hey.
And actually, there was one question where they asked who had the most eliminations in Royal Rumble history, which the correct answer is actually Braun Strowman / Brock Lesnar, because they both are tied at 13. But I don't think Braun's counts because it's part of the greatest
Royal Rumble. The Saudi. That's different.
It's not the same thing. But the quiz master had Roman Reigns as the correct answer, and so I had to go up to him and actually him. He did not appreciate it or like it, but we got our point. So
yeah, because pretty much everyone at the table was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Brock, and you were kind of like, yeah, it might be Roman, but like, no, it was that Rumble with Brock where he was dancing to MVP's music and he was just tossing folks. So I was like, it has to be Brock. Yeah. So
yeah. Actually, that's the only question we got wrong the entire evening. Was they asked us what current day main roster talent has the theme song that was originally the Chicago, what was the name? Enforcers XFL team theme song. And I was like, what the hell? Like,
none of us had. We had no idea.
Yeah, nobody knew, but apparently it's Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's theme song was first used in the XFL as the Enforcers theme song for Chicago. I think I have that right, but yeah, it's pretty that's a fun little factoid for those of you listening. And if you weren't aware, just to tie it in, Brock Lesnar, former IWGP IWGP heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
Version 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the worst champions in the history. Have you seen any Brock Lesnar in New Japan?
I think I've only seen the Angle match, which that was technically not New Japan, right? That was in
That's not New Japan.
Inoki,
that's
Genome.
IGF.
Yeah.
You've never seen any of his matches, huh?
Actually, I might have seen the Nakamura match.
I enjoyed the Nakamura match for what it is, but it's not great. I think actually his best match is probably with Nagata, but all that stuff's it's out there, you can find it, but it's not like the most accessible, and none of it's on New Japan World.
Yeah, it's all hidden stuff right now.
But anyways, here we are, and smack dab in the middle of the G1. And if you thought last week's G1 fatigue was something, I'm feeling it this week, which it's weird because I feel like we've had more strenuous G1 schedules in the past. I don't know if it's age catching up to us or what do you think it is? Because they've been pretty good.
I think it's the 8-match show.
That is what it is.
So even though, back in the day, the 2 blocks, the tour might have been a little bit longer, you had shows that were just 4 matches. So if you're behind, you skip the undercard, the multi-man tags, you jump right to the action.
Bro, we're watching 2 nights worth of matches.
Is one night, yeah.
So when we do 4 shows, we're doing like 8 shows according to the original traditional schedule, because that's how many matches we would have traditionally reviewed. Holy crap. I didn't put this together. I'm like, why am I feeling so bogged down? It's only 4 nights. Like, it's not that big. It's 8 nights. That's why. Yeah.
Because, traditionally, you'd have your 4, 5 tournament matches, and just get the undercards and it'll be gravy. But now we're having to watch the whole show from beginning to end.
Yeah, if we were only reviewing 4 nights before, that would have been like 16 matches, but now it's 32 matches. It's adding up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Okay.
Well, before we jump into that, we had a question here from Reddit user Adam Sensei 82. It says, my question is, if reading my name out on the podcast would help me win a bet with my wife, would you do it? Love, Adam. XOXO. Well, I guess I just did it.
What are the stakes? And how are we going to get any skin in that game? Like, what are we getting out of this transaction is what I'd like to know.
He's going to be able to tell his wife, hey, my name was read out on the world famous Keeping It Strong Style podcast.
I'd be willing to read your name out for sure. At the same time, red circle / what is it?
socialsuplex.com/donate.
/donate. Keeping It Strong Style tab. Hit your boys up. Drop us some love. This is essentially, right now, this is a cameo. Okay, that's what this is.
Yeah, if you want your full government name read out, you gotta drop some dollars.
I'm also worried we're doxing you. Like, how is that not doxing somebody?
I don't know.
What the fuck is a dox anyway? Then we move on.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into this G1 coverage. Like I said, we're covering nights 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we'll do the same format as we did last week. We'll go through each block, start from the top, and work our way down to who's ever in last place. So we'll start in the A block with the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Sonata, leader of Just Five Guys, has 5 points, or 5 wins with 10 points. On night 7, he defeated Kaito Kiyomiya 19 minutes and 58 seconds. And then on night 9, the champ defeated Son of Strong Style Ren Narita 16 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, so Sonata sitting at 10 points, and with him defeating Ren Narita on night 9, he has officially punched his ticket into the semifinals. Now, whether that's going in as, 1A or 2A still remains to be seen, I think, based on what I've seen. But he's done it. Like he's the first person in the entire tournament to like establish himself going into the finals. So
I think he's pretty much has it locked up.
No, he does, but I don't know if he's going to go in as 1A or 2A.
I think he has 1A locked up.
Does he?
Because he's at 10 right now. He only has 2 matches left. So regardless, he's going to end at 10. I don't think anybody else can get to 10 unless they, let's see, because
how many more nights are there? There's 2 more, right?
Yeah.
That's not true. Now I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if he lost his next 2 and somebody got to 10 and tied him, they could actually go to 1A. Although I haven't done, like I was saying earlier, I haven't done the perfect math, so you might be correct, but I think hypothetically speaking, in a broad sense, I think there's still a slight chance he could be 2A when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Until, and then who knows? The math is going to math, but that's one of the things when you and I and Chris all came together and did the previews, and we were talking about, generally speaking, when you're looking at the schedule and you look at the last few nights for each block, you're always thinking of scenarios of like, oh, this might be the qualifier. This might be something that determines who goes through. This might be, a spoiler situation. I don't think any of us were really thinking in the terms of like, because there's 2 slots, maybe only one person is on the chopping block on the final night as far as like who can go through.
Mm-hmm.
And the other slot, I mean, dude, we're only 5 nights in for this block and it's already solidified. And I don't think we'd even thought of that scenario being a possibility. But now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, duh, of course that's a possibility.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. He's the world champion. He's in here for a bunch of younger guys. He's the most experienced guy in the block. He's a champion. It makes a ton of sense to give him that kind of hot streak, especially when they're still trying to establish him as a top guy, as this main eventer. So you give him this hot streak, have him go undefeated in the block, and then that makes somebody beating him in the quarterfinals or semifinals even bigger of a deal.
Yeah, and it's also something too where when we were kind of looking at the final night scenarios, like I mentioned, we were like, man, some of these nights don't look like they have very big matches, the determinant type of matches. I wonder what that's about. This is what it's about. Sometimes some of these guys are going to already be qualified on night 5 or night 6 or night, because it's going to be 7 nights, right? For each block.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's going to already be locked up before night 7 for some of the guys. And for some blocks that are more parity based, it's probably not going to be the case. But like you mentioned, Jeremy, Sonata being champion, being the first one to lock it up, going undefeated up to this point in the tournament. Now, if anybody else were to beat him in the block, it's just going to be basically for bragging rights or maybe a title challenge opportunity down the road. But ultimately, I mean, it's not going to, push him out of a berth into the rest of the G1. He's already done it.
Yeah, and that leads to a question from Dom Homie 101. He says, well, I was wrong about Ren Narita beating Sonata. So will Sonata finish his block undefeated, or will he take a L And what's the possibility that Sonata wins the whole tournament?
So I know he's got Chase Owens left, and then who else does he have after that? I haven't totally looked at everything.
So on night 11, he has Gabe Kidd. And then on night 13, which will be the final A block night, he has Chase Owens.
Well, they're making a big deal about Chase Owens trying to defeat him because Chase isn't playing to win an opportunity to get through the block anyways. He's just trying to defeat him to get a title challenge. I would find that pretty underwhelming if that ended up being the next title challenger in the interim between now and like for the October slot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's given the fact that it's Gabe Kidd and Chase Owens, the possibility that he goes undefeated for the rest of the block is pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't really see it necessary for Gabe Kidd or Chase to beat them. Neither of those guys are big draws that you can do for that big destruction main event. So I wouldn't have him lose at this point. I would just have him go undefeated. Like I said, he's pretty much has the 1A locked up because he's beating Umino, he's beating Kiyomiya. Both those guys are at 6. If they win their next 2, they can get to 10, but Sonata will have a tiebreaker over them. Gabe Kidd, he's at 5. The best he can get to would be 9. So pretty much there's nobody that can surpass him as the 1A. So at this point, why even beat him?
Right. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and getting into the matches themselves, I mean, the Kiyomiya match has to be probably the standout match for Sonata the entire tournament. But that match kind of fits the saying, the motto that we've coined for Sonata over all these years, that he's not a guy that necessarily elevates those who are beneath him, but he can rise to the level of a guy that's higher than him. And in a certain sense, and I'm basically just basing this off of body of work, Kiyomiya is a much more acclaimed wrestler, even in his shorter career. Like, he has a lot more great matches. So the idea that they had this really high-end match, and this is the only person in the block that he had a match of this caliber with, isn't that surprising to me. I don't think it's necessarily, and I'm trying to sound diplomatic here because I got some feedback last week where people said I was going, bro, I don't know. I felt like I was pretty honest and on the nose when it came to Sonata.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were saying I was slandering him and going hard. I feel like we've held off on the slander until the appropriate time, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like people were shooting Sonata down from day one of the push.
Day one.
And, we pulled the defense squad line, let it play out. We wanted to see, all right, how's Sonata going to do? Is he going to draw? Is he going to have great matches? And there has been some great matches. He has drawn a little bit, but we're starting to see him kind of fall back into his old ways where, like you said, are saying he's not going to elevate people. He's going to wrestle to the level of the people he's in there with. And there with Kiyomiya, another Muto disciple, everything was set up right for him. Cork and Hall, both these guys, throwing Shining Wizard, super intense action here. And right down to literally only 2 seconds left, Sonata was able to hit the Shining Wizard and beat Kiyomiya right before the time limit expired.
Yeah, the match was fantastic. And, going back to the point I was making, I think it's more a case of Sonata rising to the level of Kiyomiya's level as opposed to the opposite way. Him elevating Kiyomiya I don't think that was what it was.
Right. And but, the Red Narita match, it was a good match.
It was good.
But Sonata did not help elevate Narita at all in that match.
Sonata hasn't had any bad matches in the tournament. The only one that you can really point to and criticize from a work perspective is maybe night 1 against Hikuleo, but that's probably the only one that you could really have any true criticism about. His work's been fantastic, and I mean, so much so that he's a wrestler of the month candidate. We're gonna hold off to next week to kind of because, bro, there's been so many great performances from so many great wrestlers this month that we're like, damn, we need like another week to kind of
assess. Yeah.
assess this. But the match was great. One thing I did notice is he hit him with the Shining Wizard. I think there was a slight mistiming because the way he scooped him up for the pin, I think he was trying to get him up for the deadfall.
Yeah.
And they realized there wasn't enough time because they started counting. He's like, damn it, 1, 2, 3. And there's only 2 seconds left. But I think that he was meant to hit him with the Shining Wizard and then bring him up for the deadfall and then get the 1, 2, 3. So I think they got that timing a little off, but most people probably wouldn't notice it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Dave was saying that apparently they went a little bit over the time. That it was like 20 minutes and like 3 seconds or 5 seconds, something like that. And actually that they kind of goofed on the time and it went longer. But
well, that's not true because I heard them calling.
But either way, yeah, it definitely seemed like he was going to go for deadfall. But I mean, I think it works out fine. Shining Wizard, that's one of Kiyomiya's big moves, since both of them are Muto trainees, and so I think it worked out for the story, that match.
I don't think Kiyomiya is a Muto trainee. I think the deal is Kiyomiya, was in that feud with Muto, and
right,
had to basically steal his whole shtick to basically get put over by him because he lost to him 3 times first.
Yeah. So,
but I see what you're saying though.
Yeah. So overall, Sonata, good performances here, has it locked up. Back to Dom Homie's question, I don't think he should win the whole tournament.
No.
They should definitely, somebody needs to win and set up a challenge for him.
I mean, there's definitely going to be a year. Well, maybe not definitely, but I would love to see a year where someone was champion and they won the tournament, because it's happened a few times in the past, but it hasn't happened since Kensuke Sasaki in 2000. So it's been a very long time. And I would just love for them to kind of buck all the trends and do that one time, because then that opens up a whole treasure trove of different booking possibilities afterwards in the fallout of that.
Yeah.
And you could really the G1's always been important. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to knock. If anybody's listening, me. I'm an old school New Japan fan. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not, that I'm not going to shit on 90s and early 2000s New Japan, but the worldwide, effect of New Japan has spread. It's a much more international company and worldwide company than it was in those days. And with, every iteration of the G1, the entire aura and importance of the tournament has only grown over the years. And so at this point in time, if someone were to do that, I feel like they would get more out of it than say Muto in 95.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're the world champion and you win the G1 Climax, it's like, holy fuck. I feel like only Okada could probably do that at this point. But that's basically the point I'm getting to. I don't think Sonata could be the guy that they decide to be like, you know what? Not only are you champion going into G1, you're going to win the fucker too.
Yeah, you're literally going to go undefeated through the whole thing. You're going to win your block, go 7-0, and then you're going to clean house in the quarters, the semifinals, and the finals.
The only way you could fix that, Chase beats him, and then he wins the entire G1, and then he has to face Chase in October. Also, I want to just point out, I kept calling the October event King of Pro Wrestling, and I was corrected on the show a few weeks ago by you guys. You guys said it's Destruction, right?
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Kelly was calling it King of Pro Wrestling as well, and he got corrected live on the air by Chris Charlton. So I'm not the only one.
I mean, old habits die hard. We're used to that October calendar date being King of Pro Wrestling.
Yeah. Loved the Kiyomiya match. I was a little, I was kind of expecting Ren Narita beat Sonata just because I was like, up the intrigue,
the drama,
the drama, keep it going. They haven't given a lot to Narita. He's only got 2 points. This might be the big feather in his cap. Nah. But the match was really good. Sonata's had a great tournament.
Yeah, he's been good. He's been fun to watch most nights, and yeah, he's getting his stride a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like that Kiyomiya win did a lot for him in Korakuen, but there's no denying that the crowd wanted to see Kiyomiya beat him.
Yeah, and I know people were kind of harping on us about the crowd reaction thing, and I know that Korakuen can be more smarky and they love the underdogs, but it's still kind of
Is Noah trash in Shinny?
Yeah, it's a pro wrestling Noah guy
in the Mecca.
He's getting more. He's getting more cheers than the world champion. Like, not even dueling chants. Like, if it was Kiyomiya and Okada, like, they'd probably want the underdog win, but Okada would still be getting like his fair share of chants. I don't feel like Sonata got a ton of chants in that match.
One thing I loved about, and we'll move on, but I loved how commentary was talking about how Kiyomiya is this guy that, has basically been like an ace for Noah and won the N1 and everything like that. But now he's ventured off to kind of test himself in these waters against the world champion. That whole story is very compelling. Like, I'm still pulling for Kiyomiya to be the guy that comes out of this block as 2A, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he has to. I have a hard time seeing them not doing the Okada match, but we'll talk about Kiyomiya in a second. First, we need to talk about the roughneck Shota Umino, who has 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, so he's at 6 points. Night 7, Shota defeated Gabe Kidd, 13 minutes and 3 seconds, and then on night 9, he defeated the crown jewel Chase Owens, 9 minutes and 35 seconds.
Yeah, night 7, he came out and, everyone was kind of wondering where in the arena he would actually enter from in Korakuen. And then Gabe Kidd shot out that corridor hall doorway that you weren't really sure, because everyone's been wondering, like, Gabe Kidd's been attacking everybody before every match. How is he going to get to Shota Umino up in the crowd? He found a way.
Got him on site.
Oh, man, it was like SmackDown in 2016. I'm going to keep making that joke. I love 2016 SmackDown. Everyone getting jumped backstage all the time.
Yeah, the jump zone's alive and well when Gabe Kidd's out there.
Listen, there's not much WWE you could convince me to go back and like rewatch, but 2016 SmackDown, I love 2016 SmackDowns.
2016 was a good year.
It was a good year, but Umino defeated Gabe Kidd. They brawled all over the outside as a lot of the Gabe Kidd. Let me ask you: is there hate out there for the Gabe Kidd stuff that's going on? Because I'm feeling like there is, but I don't get it. Like, I love this shit.
Yeah, here's what I'll say. I think overall in the tournament, I think there's too much fighting on the outside. And I think it's diminishing what Gabe Kidd is doing. There's a lot of people who are brawling, having these kind of plunder stuff, Kenta, all stuff on the outside. I think there's a lot happening on the outside. There should be more happening in the ring. But for Gabe Kidd's character and his role, I like what he's doing. I think it fits his push, what they're doing with the War Dogs, kind of these mercenaries that just want to take people out. Not really necessarily caring about winning the tournament. They just want to bring bodies to David Finlay. And so I think for him it works. And I've been enjoying pretty much all his stuff and jumping from the get-go. I love the mix-up with the Narita match last week where Narita kind of caught him at the ramp. But yeah, I'm digging stuff with Gabe Kidd. But overall, I can get people's complaint if they think there's too much happening out the ring.
And I know we're going to talk more about Gabe Kidd, but I just want to jump on that for a brief moment. One thing that I like about what they're doing with him is, like, it's not like Evil, right? With Evil, he used to be this bruiser, this like never style fighter, and then he went into the shenanigans and he never really went back. I mean, you might see a slight glimpse of what he used to be, and it's only like in the most desperate of situations does he start to even go into the base of what made him great prior to the Bullet Club turn with House of Torture. I don't feel like that's the same thing with Gabe Kidd. I know some people are disappointed that he's doing the outside brawling and the shenanigans or whatever, but I'm not getting the impression that this is going to be his forever, MO. He's still the same dude that kicks ass and can do all the stuff he was doing on Strong prior to becoming a War Dog. And we still see a lot of that in his matches.
Mhm.
And I think that this is just another progression of his character. And as time goes on, like once they give him more, we're going to see more of what made him great in the first place prior to all this. Like, I don't think that this is just his, his fallback or whatever.
Yeah, and we've seen that before tournament when he was doing the stuff with Coughlin. Like they were having some good stuff in the tag division. The matches with Bishamon.
Those matches were great.
Yeah, and there wasn't a ton of shenanigans there. So I think, again, this is probably his story for the tournament as establishing this, loose cannon personality. And then I think going forward, yeah, we'll see some more great stuff from him.
Well, Umino had 2 nights of Bullet Club, opponents here, and he was able to basically weather the storm against 2 people that were both, very much intending to hurt him and use every single shortcut available to them to defeat him. And he found a way to get past all their tricks and treachery and find a way to win. I think that the Umino Gabe Kidd stuff was a little more compelling. I didn't love the Chase Owens match because Chase kind of was in control for a large majority of that match, which is fine, but there wasn't a lot of back and forth. It was sort of just Umino selling until he came back and hit him with the
Death Rider,
finisher. But ultimately, he's up to 6 points, which last week we were kind of wondering, out of these 3 Musketeers, the Reiwa Musketeers, which ones were going to progress and which ones were going to fall back. And as we sort of alluded to, the company has a little bit more faith and, aspiration right now for Shota Umino rather than the other 2. And he's the only one that's sitting at the 6 point mark right now. So,
yeah, his last 2 matches, he has Yota Tsuji on night 11, and night 13, he has Hikuleo.
So, I mean, at this point, Umino is still alive in terms of that 2-way slot, which I think is going to be the drama between him and Kiyomiya going down the stretch. And it makes a lot more sense for why they had the draw against one another. I'm glad I'm not Chris Samsa. I don't have to do the tiebreaker situations here because I'm sure it gets pretty convoluted, honestly.
Yeah. Good set of matches here for Umino. Also, the Gabe Kidd match, probably the better of the 2. But yeah, Umino, he's still alive to get the 2-way. And then you mentioned Kaito Kiyomiya. He has the same record here with 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, 6 points. Night 7, like we mentioned, he lost to Sonata. And then on night 9, he had the double count out brawl with Gabe Kidd. Man, that was awesome.
Yeah, I think Kiyomiya right now, for me, I think he's MVP of A Block.
Yeah.
And I'm loving what they've been doing with him. I know that there are probably those fans out there that are looking at his projection in the tournament and maybe, especially if they're like hardcore Noah fans, kind of complaining like, why hasn't he been given more? But I mean, they're kind of doing a great job straddling that line of like not burying him, but also not, there's still that political game. You don't want to give the ace of Noah too much. And they're allowing him to kind of showcase what makes him so great, why he has the reputation that he does. And the matches have been standout. I love the Sonata match. I love the physicality of it. The drama, the story, everything. That was like, to me, that was one of the best matches of the entire tournament. And then the Gabe Kidd match was very much reminiscent of what made the angle at the early part of the year between Kiyomiya and Okada so fantastic. Was just that harsh physicality. And like at one point, like the crowd was booing Gabe Kidd. So they're on the outside for a long time. And Gabe Kidd is just roughhousing Kiyomiya, and he's beating the shit out of him, and he's using chairs and barricades and everything. And the crowd is booing Gabe Kidd, but then Kiyomiya unleashes like his like inner like bastard, and he starts fighting back.
Murder Kiyomiya.
Yeah, and the crowd starts booing him, like, and it kind of becomes clear like the crowd wants clean, classic G1, like prestigious, wrestling.
Mhm.
And they're not getting that here, but these guys didn't care. They started and it turned so heated that they actually got the crowd to turn from their booing to like, oh, okay, we're with the smoke. Like, let's fucking go.
Yeah,
and they ended up getting the double count out, but it was one of the best double count outs probably in G1 history, honestly.
Yeah, this thing was so heated. These guys were firing these big slaps and chops and strikes. And yeah, Kiyomiya got in that same kind of mode that he was with Okada earlier in the year. And yeah, these guys are just both yelling, cursing at each other, throwing these big, heavy strikes. Looks like a real kind of knock them out, drag out fight. Just fighting on the outside, having to have security pull them away after the count out. And yeah, the crowd, they were cheering Gabe Kidd at the end of that, and kind of defending New Japan, and he did his little promo at the end, and they were kind of getting behind him until he flicked them off, and then they booed him again. So
one thing, and we have some questions here. We'll get to that, but I just wanted to ask you, Jeremy, because I'm not totally clear. So last week I was like, yeah, if you only have 4 points, you're pretty much done. But I think I'm still kind of operating under the old way of thinking about G1 blocks, where it's like there's a point leader, and if you can't get to that point leader, you're done. But I'm forgetting that there's a second whole slot. And right now, like, all these guys are sitting at 6 points. Like, is everybody like kind of still alive in this block except for like Tsuji and Narita?
Yeah, I think Tsuji and Narita, they're done. And then, yeah, Hikuleo, Chase, Gabe Kidd, Kiyomiya, and Umino could all get to 2A.
Yeah, that kind of changes a lot of what I was saying and thinking last week when we were, basically going over all this. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, some of these blocks, the way this is all like set up, especially with Sonata being so dominant, it actually allows someone to kind of squeak in with a much lower point total than we would traditionally think of.
Yeah, and I think it's going to make the drama for the final A block night super high with so many guys still able to get that 2A spot.
Bro, listen, like, I hate to be this guy, but like, someone needs to give fucking Gato his flowers, because he is booking a masterful tournament right now.
Yeah. Its A block has been laid out very well. So
if it was me, I would be booking it the way like a traditional G1 block is booked, but I keep forgetting about the 2 slots, and it changes everything.
Yeah. So 2 questions here. Rambo and Slam Pig says, what are your thoughts on how Kiyomiya has been booked in the tournament? Is it typical of how outside stars have been booked in the past? I can't help but have the sense that the office sees a possible future star for the company there and are paving the way now. And Dom Homie 101 says, is it me, or does it seem like there's some tampering and under-the-table deal going between NJPW and Kaito Kiyomiya?
Listen, I don't know that there is, and I know a lot of people feel that that's what's happening, but I wouldn't blame them if it was.
Yeah. We've seen in the past where top guys come in from other companies and they end up signing with New Japan. So it's not unlikely. I mean, it could happen, but we don't know of anything happening. As far as how Kiyomiya is being booked, I think he's being booked well. I mean, he's tied for second right now in the block. I know, again, if you have that kind of old G1 mindset, you see 6 points and we're almost done with block play, and you're like, that doesn't look right. But I mean, he's alive. He's tied for second with Shota Umino. So I think he's being booked pretty well.
Yeah. It's almost sort of like in a block like this where you have somebody so dominant, the other guys are sort of playing for like a wild card spot, like NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes wild card people that go through to the playoffs, like, they win Super Bowls. You don't know what's going to happen by the time we get into the semifinals. That's going to be a whole different, more definitive ball game than what we're getting right now. And the drama, obviously the drama's gone when it comes to Sonata, but because he's the champion, the rest of his matches do have some stakes tied to them. And then for everybody else, they're playing for, basically to go through as the second guy. And then even the other 2, like Tsuji and Narita, like, sure, they're out, and that does suck, and you kind of have to question that.
Mm-hmm.
But because they gave them this Musketeer, name, they're fighting for pride to like make sure that their like point totals match up with everybody else by the time it's all said and done. Because they don't want to be left in the dust of like Umino.
Right, and I think both those guys can still end with decent point totals by how this thing shakes out. But yeah, I definitely think that the drama is going to play out really well on that last night.
Last thing on Kiyomiya, just to kind of answer these questions, though. Again, I don't know if there's any sort of tampering going on. I don't know if they're angling to get the guy here. But when you hear the comments of like Kevin Kelly on commentary, he's not pulling any punches. And like he's pretty clear that like management there has fumbled this guy time and time again. And there's been a lot of strange, precarious decisions when it comes to him. And I see it one of two ways. Either they're kind of investing in the future and he's a guy that can come back and do business here and be part of the roster and be part of the youth movement and everything like that. Or he's a guy that they can help boost and go back to his company and actually be a viable, legit, standard bearer for the company. Something that Noah hasn't done a great job really establishing him with, but him coming to New Japan and being in the G1 and working all these matches with these great guys, I can only see that like lifting his profile. And then when he goes back over there, there's a foil for anybody because there is a quasi working relationship between the two companies currently. Mm-hmm. When they send other people over there, there's a guy that they can do business with, so I think it's beneficial either way, regardless of whether he signs or whether he returns to Noah, one way or the other.
Yeah, we've seen post-pandemic that New Japan has been working with a lot of promotions. They want to raise back the state of wrestling in Japan. Pretty much across the board, everybody's has lower attendance, than they had pre-COVID. So they're just trying to get the state of wrestling back to what it was. A rising tide will lift all ships. So they want all promotions to do well. So wrestling as a whole can be doing well in Japan, and everybody can be selling out. And that way, if wrestling is great as a whole, that then New Japan's the biggest company, then it's going to do great stuff for them as well.
Well, even beyond that, I mean, you look at like, say, Forbidden Door, right? There's a couple ancillary, isolated stories that have kind of gone back and forth between AEW and New Japan. And there's sort of a through brand that you can kind of follow between the shows that each of those two companies have with one another. Same thing with Wrestle Kingdom Night 3 or Night 2 or whatever you want to label it. Every year for the last 2 years, they've had a New Japan versus Noah show. And the first two shows, a lot of it was built on LIJ versus Congo, Kano versus Naito. But now they've kind of done this thing with Okada and Kiyomiya, and Kiyomiya's come to the G1. I'm sure that moving forward, if he does go back to Noah next year, if they do another one of those Noah versus New Japan shows, guess who's going to be the big draw on their side? Guess who they're going to be willing to do business with? It just benefits them across the board. Like, that's a big moneymaker for them.
Yeah.
It reminds me in some ways of like how they treat Moxley.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Next guy here, War Ready Gabe Kidd. He has 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 5 points. Night 7, like we mentioned, he lost to Shota Umino. And then on night 9, he had the draw with Kiyomiya that we mentioned. And we've kind of talked about him already. But yeah, Gabe Kidd has been great. The intensity, the promos, the pre-match brawls, just the intensity he brings to his matches has been really fun to watch.
I don't have much more to add, but the one thing is like he's kind of sneakily gotten to this 5-point mark, and you're like, yeah, he's pretty much done. But then you're like, oh, it's anyone's ball game for 2A. So he's still kind of alive. And the way he's been brutalizing people and like using these underhanded tactics and attacking people before the bell, like I don't see him as being the guy that could get through to being that second entrant, but it's very intriguing the fact that he is still alive.
Yeah, he has Sonata and Tsuji for his last 2 matches. So those are 2 big guys that he could beat that could get him to 9 points and get him to 2A.
I would love it if he beat Sonata. And I like Sonata, but I love Gabe Kidd. And so, like, the idea of Gabe Kidd beating him, it's so far-fetched. It's not going to happen, but I would love it.
Yeah, it definitely shake things up, and it would be an interesting title defense to do Sonata versus Gabe Kidd. But yeah, those are two guys, Sonata and Tsuji. Like, well, Sonata can take the loss, but Tsuji's a guy, he just needs as many points as he can get. So that could be a tough match there for Gabe Kidd, but he does have the possibility to win the last two, get 9 points, and go to be a 2A. So next up, Crown Jewel Chase Owens, 2 wins, 3 losses, 4 points. Night 7, he lost to Yota Tsuji, and night 9, he lost to Shota Umino.
Yeah, Chase Owens, he's kind of in this weird predicament where it's like we sort of all know what the deal is. Like, he's just here to sort of be like the good little hand, the veteran that sort of works with everybody else. But at the same time, he's been putting in some really great performances. I thought that the match with Yota Tsuji in particular was way better than I expected it to be. And it was good to see Tsuji pick up his first points or whatever for a big win. But, he dropped the loss to Shota Umino, big detriment to him. And I guess he's alive, but he's a lot further back. He's going to need a lot of help from Umino, Kiyomiya, and Gabe Kidd if he's really realistically going to pass through. I think for him, the big story point is just basically he's got Sonata on the final night. If he beats Sonata with how brash and how, kind of over the top annoying he is, he's going to be lobbying for some sort of title shot, which stranger things have happened. Maybe it could happen. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, in the past, we've seen him beat Tanahashi to get a U.S. title match. He's beaten Ishii in the past in G1. So Chase can pull out wins against top guys. So yeah, that'd be a huge feather in his cap if he was the one guy that was able to beat Sonata. Again, I have a hard time seeing them book a big show main event with Sonata and Chase, unless they're going to do something small in September maybe, or you have Fighting Spirit Unleashed in the U.S. Maybe you do it there.
Sonata loses to somebody else in the semifinals, and that's the October title defense, but on the road to destruction. He also defends the title against Chase Owens. You got to pump those numbers up, baby,
Yeah, pump those Korakuen houses up, do a big title defense.
He's only had so many title defenses. It's gonna be better for him in the long run to be like, I had 4 successful title defenses as opposed to 3,
Yeah.
But I don't think Chase Owens is gonna beat him.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Next up, Hikuleo, also 2 wins, 3 losses, 4 points. Night 7, he defeated Ren Narita. Night 9, defeating Yota Tsuji. And man, this was a really good week for Hikuleo. Last week I mentioned that I want somebody to have the Lance Archer speech with him and be more monster. Well, I think somebody had that talk with him because, man, he looked great this week and he was tossing guys around, especially this Ren Narita match. He was finally kind of being a bully and using his size and his strength, and he was tossing Narita all over the place.
Yeah, but Jeremy, was it a case of someone had the talk with him and he turned a corner and he started beating people just coincidentally on the same nights that he was beating people? Or was it a case of I'm not going over in the past, so I'm not going to give them the monster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Say what you will about Hulk Hogan, horrible racist, but one thing I always appreciate about Hulk Hogan is when he was going to win, he tried less hard. And on the nights he was going to lose, he's like, his entire philosophy was the opposite way. He's like, if you're beating me, I'm going to look great in defeat. There's no way you're going to make me look bad in defeat. And he would try his hardest on the nights when he knew that people were going to beat him. I feel like maybe there's a little bit of that going on with Hikuleo because he beat Ren Narita and he beat Yota Tsuji, 2 members of the Reiwa Musketeers. And I feel like because he knew he was winning, he was like, all right, now it's time to turn up.
I mean, maybe that was the case. Whatever it was, I thought he looked really good. And, that Narita match, he was just throwing Narita around. Narita was trying to chop him down with strikes and submissions and just could not get a full grasp on him. And Hikuleo was able to defeat him. And then the Yota Tsuji match, I mean,
that match rolled.
That match was awesome. Both these tall, big guys going back and forth.
Yeah, the funny thing about that was like they drummed up this animosity between the two on commentary because they were like, Tsuji is the quote unquote giant / monster of the Musketeers, but the real giant is Hikuleo. So very strong, Big John Studd and Andre the Giant vibes going on there.
Yeah.
But I think that match just kind of rolled because Tsuji hit all of his big offense and he just rules.
Yeah, Tsuji was doing all of his big power stuff. The Hikuleo was looking great, doing the dives, and then Hikuleo was doing some pretty athletic stuff in that match as well. And finally caught him with the big choke slam.
I'm not too surprised either because, I know they mentioned how Hikuleo spent some time in the LA dojo with Ren Narita, but like, I think he spent more time, and I'm just guessing, but based on what I remember, I feel like he spent more time in England, probably training in the Rev Pro dojos and various dojos with Yota Tsuji. So I'm not surprised that they had a lot of chemistry. They had a pretty cool match, kind of underrated if you ask me.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, it looked like Tsuji was about to beat him, but Hikuleo kind of put the kibosh on that. I am wondering if that was the right decision because now Tsuji is like completely eliminated. And I know we were complaining the past few weeks that they weren't like pushing Hikuleo the way we thought that they should be and would be. But I'm wondering if like Tsuji's the sacrificial lamb you should have put on the pedestal for a guy like Hikuleo, someone that everyone's been a little bit, iffy on. I know that we see a lot of promise in Hikuleo, don't get me wrong, but like Tsuji kind of feels like the future, and he's like done after that loss.
Yeah, that was very weird booking there, especially because Tsuji's a guy that they debuted him in a main event of Dominion, big world title match, clearly positioned him higher than other young lions. I mean, Shota Umino didn't get a world title match coming back. Ren Narita didn't get a world title match coming back. A lot of these guys, Great Okan, none of these young lions are really getting. I mean, even Jay White. I mean, yes, he had the match with Tanahashi coming back, but none of these guys are getting world title matches coming back, and they gave that to Tsuji, and clearly they see something in him, and you thought, all right, that was his first match, world title match. We get it. He loses there. He'll probably turn up in G1, and that hasn't been the case. He's been having really good matches, but you would think that they would be pushing him super hard based on the way they brought him back.
Yeah, I agree, and I felt like it was a bit perplexing, honestly.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I know that even like when you look at like Jay White, he lost his first Tanahashi match and lost a couple of matches before he won the U.S. title. And some of these guys, when they bring them back, they do kind of lose a little bit before they get them in the slotting they want. But I think they should abandon that. Like, clearly, you hear the crowd reactions, you see the charisma, you see the wrestling. Like, you got to pivot. You got to push this guy.
I don't want to complain too much, though, because at the same time, like, there's always sort of been that dangerous element of the G1 Climax when you have a dangerous monster, and it kind of harkens back to like Bad Luck Fale. He's a guy that sort of had the number of Nakamura and Tanahashi and Okada and was just credible enough to beat those guys when called upon, even if he himself wasn't going to do super well in the block. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
that kind of reminded me of that. Like Hikuleo, sure, he hasn't done great up to this point. And I don't mean from a performance standpoint. I just mean from like, he's got 4 points. But at the same time, he can beat studs like Ren Narita and Yota Tsuji. And who knows, like he is still quote unquote alive. So maybe he could go through. I don't see that happening. But it kind of establishes something for the future because maybe there is money in Suji and Narita having this little test in front of them that they kind of have to overcome down the road.
Right, you kind of build a little underdog narrative for them, maybe get fans a little bit more bought in and invested in their story instead of giving them everything up front.
And that does something for them, and it does something for Hikuleo, and that's what the aim of it all is anyways.
Yeah. So speaking of Suji, he's the next guy here. 1 win, 3 losses, 1 draw, 3 points. So like we mentioned, night 7, defeating Chase Owens to get his first win. And then on night 9, like we mentioned, dropping the fall to Hikuleo.
I mean, I think we've talked about him quite a bit. We do have a question here, though, regarding Yota Tsuji.
Yeah, from Reddit user JGX Fighter Hayabusa says, considering Yota Tsuji gets a favorable reaction every time out, how soon should he have a major title run and upper echelon status? Should his ascent be slow or on the fast side like Jay White's?
Was Jay White's run, or like, was his ascent fast? I don't remember it being that fast. It took like 2 years.
I guess it depends on how you define ascent, because he did beat Kenny Omega his second month.
That's true.
For the U.S. title.
That's true. But then at the same time, like, he held the U.S. title. Who did he lose that to?
Juice.
Oh, it was Juice.
Yeah.
Well, that's when we used to have like good titles.
Yeah, I would say even though he did beat Kenny, he was still kind of slotted more in that mid-card range with the U.S. title.
Right.
And then
like he wasn't like a main eventer, even though like, yeah, he beat Okada on the first night of his first G1. It took a while before he became like a true main eventer. Like it took until he beat Okada in Wrestle Kingdom a year after his debut, didn't he?
Yeah, Wrestle Kingdom 14.
It was like a year, like he debuted, he lost to Tanahashi, and then a year later he beat Okada at Wrestle Kingdom, and then a month or two later he was beating Tanahashi for the world title. So yeah, I guess he did have like a 1 year ascent, which is pretty fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love for that to happen for Tsuji. I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
I mean, I think Tsuji has had, even though his matches haven't necessarily been like, I can't call him the MVP right now in the same way of Kiyomiya, because he hasn't had the same overall match. Like if I was grading his matches, I wouldn't be like, yeah, he's had a bunch of 4-star matches, but just for individual performances, he just fucking rules. He's my favorite guy in the block. I love him.
I would say he's the guy that's connecting with the crowd the most out of everybody in this block.
They are reacting to him, and I have to imagine that doesn't go unnoticed by the office, you know, even if it doesn't seem super apparent to me. Like New Japan, they're listening. You know what I mean? Like if someone is money, they're going to take notice of it. They took notice when Naito started getting over, you know?
Yeah. Then last in the block here, Son of Strong Style, Ren Narita, 0 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, 2 points. Night 7 losing to Hikuleo, and night 9 losing to Sonata.
Who does Ren Narita have left in the tournament?
Let's see. On night 11, he has... He has Chase Owens, night 11.
Okay.
And then on night 13, he has Kaito Kiyomiya.
Damn. So these are just my early predictions. Like right now, Narita's at 2 points. He's at the bottom of the block. That sucks. I love Ren Narita. But I feel like the Chase Owens match is something that's very winnable. And like we mentioned earlier, Chase is already at 4 points. Like he's probably on the chopping block anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I think he beats Chase, upping his points to 4, so he's more parity based.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of creates a scenario where like Chase, his only silver lining is like, I could possibly beat the world champion on my final night. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's the story. Then he could maybe play spoiler against Kiyomiya and be the guy that like cost him his title or cost him his berth into the G1, semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
And that would get him up to like 6 points, which is pretty respectable at the end of the day, even if he's not in the runnings currently.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time though seeing him play spoiler for Kiyomiya because I just feel like why would you bring Kiyomiya in and not do the Okada match in the quarterfinals or semifinals, however that's going to work out?
When I say spoiler, I don't mean like he's going to succeed. I mean like that's the role that he's facilitating.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
He's going into the match to try and stop him from winning. Which I do mostly agree with you, but there is a part of me that kind of feels like they might put Shota Umino through.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but I can't deny the possibility that Umino goes through over Kiyomiya.
Yeah, I mean, they could do it, but I mean, I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't either. But if you were going to have anybody in this block go back to Noah at some point in time to have a rematch with a guy like Kiyomiya, Narita kind of fits the MO of modern day Noah more so than anybody else in the block.
Yeah, you could do a big rematch there, and then maybe you save the Kiyomiya rematch for Okada for Wrestle Kingdom or some other big show down the road.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I love Narita. I think he's been great in the tournament. I have heard some criticism about him being like, he doesn't seem as motivated as he did during the World Television title tournament. And it's maybe because like the handwriting's on the wall, like he's not one of the favored sons of New Japan currently, and there's sort of that story arc where he needs to find himself. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been doing good. Yeah, I've heard that criticism also, but honestly, like the spotlight's not really on him in this block.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's part of it. Well, let's move over to the B block now. Top of the block, we have the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, 4 wins, 1 loss, 8 points. Night 7, defeating Yoshihashi, 16 minutes, 32 seconds. And then night 9, got his first loss against Will Ospreay, 17 minutes and 21 seconds.
Is it weird that I liked the Yoshihashi match better than the Will Ospreay match?
It might be a little weird, but I could see where you're coming from.
I loved the Will Ospreay match. Like when you talk about perfection in pro wrestling, just like what is a really high standard of modern day pro wrestling? I think of like Ospreay and Okada. Nothing to complain about. But I felt like the way that they worked the match, and maybe this is by design, they kind of needed more time to like, it just ended sort of abruptly and it was less satisfying. But like the Yoshihashi match, I don't know. I was just more emotionally invested in it because even though, Will's, I guess this is what it felt like for me. Will's never beat Okada clean before. And they were trying to tell a story where it's like, damn, I've never even gone less than 20 minutes with this guy. It's always gone over the time limit. How am I going to do it? And then he just did it. He just caught him and it just happened.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, there it is. But with Yoshihashi, it's like he has no chance in hell of beating this dude. And he tried his fucking hardest. He countered like 6 Rainmakers in this match.
Yeah, he did.
And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go Yoshihashi. I wanted him to beat Okada so fucking bad.
So did I, because I know he got the promo the previous night talking about, now's the time for him to beat Okada. The Corkin crowd was fully behind him, and I was like, Okada hadn't lost yet. I was like, he can, give the first loss, be that big upset. And yeah, he was throwing everything out there. Those big Western lariats. He was countering the Rainmaker. He ended a big Kumagoroshi. He was hitting all the stops trying to beat Okada, but he just couldn't get the job done.
The funny thing is, like, I'm not great with finishers, and I'm not always sure what like Yoshihashi's finisher even is. Is it the Karma?
Yeah, Karma.
What is the Karma?
It's
I just know the name. I forget what it is until I see
kind of
it.
like a Made in Japan kind of move.
Okay, okay, yeah. Because like he was hitting all these like signatures, and I'm like, he got him. Because Yoshihashi wrestles so many like tag team matches with Goto. I only know what like their finish is as a tag team. I don't know what his singles finish is. And I know like he's been instituting that new like
Crucifix driver.
the crucifix bomb, and he almost got that. I don't know. He did really good, but yeah, it sucked he didn't beat Okada. I thought it was hilarious that Kevin Kelly was calling out Walter Yates from PWI on the air. Because that's someone that I've gotten into it online with, and I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Why don't you? But like, he made a comment on Twitter where he was like, Yoshihashi's at this point doesn't need to beat Okada. And then Kevin Kelly like totally kayfabed it, and he's like, "Of course he needs to beat Okada. It's the G1. That's the point of wrestling."
Yeah, and they've had a history, even being in the same faction, but also they're both coming back from excursion. Their big match against each other, and they've kind of been linked together. And Yoshihashi's had several chances to beat Okada in the past and just couldn't get the job done. And it felt like now, if at all, now would be the time based on the run Yoshihashi's had since the pandemic, where he's at right now. And it just felt like it could have been a good chance for him. But yeah, he just couldn't get it done.
The circumstances kind of seemed like maybe it was the right time. But at the same point, they did a great job on commentary, basically highlighting that Yoshihashi, when these two guys were in the dojo together, that Yoshihashi was the senpai and Okada was his underling and everything like that. But then when they returned from excursion, not really so much the case, and kind of telling that story. So one thing I will say though, Okada, we don't know for sure. We'll look at the numbers, but like probably wrestler of the month, probably the MVP of B Block, probably the top guy in the world, which like is what you sort of normally expect from Okada, but you don't always get that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you compare and contrast it with last year's G1, when he was in that monster block, he's having a much better G1, performance-wise than he did last year.
Yeah. And the Ospreay match was great. Like you said, there's so much history and story behind the Ospreay and Okada rivalry. It really needed more time. And I just think with the way that Okada traditionally lays his matches out, he does have traditionally a longer beginning stretch that leads into the meat of his matches. And this match, I felt like the first maybe like 3 to 5 minutes was like the Okada pacing. And then after 5 minutes, they were like, all right, we got to go. And then from there, it was like a fast pace, moves, counter, bam, Stormbreaker, the end. And so definitely like kind of a great sprint version of their match. Like they got all the greatest hits. They got a lot of great counters. But a lot of that other story, you knew if they had 30 minutes or if this was a world title match and they had an hour, it would have been laid out way differently. There would have been more callbacks. There would have been more counters. There would have been more wilder spots.
Well, like when Omega beat Okada in the G1 for the first time ever, that was a super condensed version of the matches they had been having prior. But at least that 30-minute mark, you can kind of do more with it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had many complaints about the 20-minute time limit. I love it for this G1, but the one match that I feel like was, basically hurt by the 20-minute time limit. And it's crazy to say that because the match is still incredible for what it is, but it's Ospreay versus Okada. It did not reach the heights it should and could have. And I think part of that is on the performers. I don't know if they laid out for themselves what they wanted to do or were capable of doing in that, time constraint. But it did feel abrupt. It just didn't feel like it flowed with for how long we've been waiting for Ospreay to cleanly beat Okada and then to kind of give them this task that you need to tell the story, but you need to do it in a condensed version. I wanted more, but they kind of were just doing the same match they've always done, and then suddenly Ospreay just caught him in the middle of an Okada, finishing sequence, and that came from out of nowhere. I didn't expect it.
And
I'm not surprised that Ospreay beat him, but I just didn't love the manner that they did it.
Yeah, and they still had like 2.5 minutes left that they could have used as well. They didn't even tease a time limit draw. And you'd think with their history, if anything, that match should have teased, if not have gone to the draw.
Maybe in kayfabe, it tells you an idea of like, he's on the level now and he doesn't need the full 20 minutes. He can beat him. I mean, it is, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I know Chris did some research on this and we retweeted what he put out there, but like, it's been a very long time since anybody has defeated Okada in under 20 minutes. So that is a feather in the cap of Ospreay, and he does have that to claim. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, since you're speaking about Will, he's the next guy here. Also 4-1 with 8 points. Night 7, he defeated the Great Okan, 11 minutes and 20 seconds. And then, like we just mentioned, Night 9, he defeated Kazuchika Okada.
Well, there was the, speculation about the importance of the match with the Great Okan. I thought they had a very good match, a great opener to a great show. That Night 7 show was just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked the interactions between those two guys and the work they did with one another. But, Will has had one of the stronger tournaments of the year. He beats Okan, he beats Okada. He's on a great trajectory right now, and he's tied with Okada 8 points at the top of the block.
Yeah, I thought the Okan match was a lot of fun. That's another match that just kind of ended abruptly. Also, it was 11 minutes, 20 seconds. I feel like there was more that they could have done. But for that 11 minutes, it was a very good matchup. First time seeing, United Empire guys face off against each other. And I thought it was really fun. At this point, Great Okan pretty much had like nothing left to lose. So he kind of went out there and was being pretty aggressive with Will. But yeah, that was a fun match. And then, yeah, we talked about the Okada match, and Will, he in a matter of a month, his time span, he's beaten Kenny Omega and now beaten Kazuchika Okada, two of his greatest rivals, two of the best wrestlers in the world. He's riding a big wave of momentum right now.
We actually have questions related to what you just mentioned.
Yeah, so Rambone Slam Pig says Ospreay has topped Okada and Omega inside of 1 calendar year. I assume a third match of Omega is awaiting. But beyond that, what comes next? Seems like a run with the top belt is logical in his near future, given his status in the company and the trajectory of his year.
Yeah, I have to somewhat agree. But, given the fact that he has the red belt currently, it feels weird.
Yeah, that's a tough thing that Will's with right now. Like, if he was not the U.S. champion, I'd be like, full go, he needs to win the G1. Let's have a main event in Tokyo Dome, win the world title in the main event. But yeah, the U.S. title kind of throws things into kind of a weird place. I mean, you could still have him win the G1, but then what do you do with the U.S. title? Does he, vacate it? Does he lose it to somebody else? Does he lose, does he defend against Taichi and lose it to Taichi, and then it's still the world title contender? I don't know. It kind of gets weird and kind of muddy there. Then next question from Donovan 101. Thoughts on Will Ospreay beating Kazuchika Okada for the first time? Are you shocked that the defeat didn't take place at a Wrestle Kingdom in Tokyo Dome? And is it Ospreay's G1 to lose at this point?
Well, we have to remember he has a lot, even though he's got a tiebreaker over Okada, and they're tied in points right now. There's obviously 2 slots, so 2 people could easily go through. So if they both keep winning all their matches, they both could just easily go through. And who's to say they don't run into one another in the semifinals at some point, Then again, he does have a loss to Taichi, who is only sitting at 6 points, not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
And if the maths itself right, I could easily see Taichi being the guy that surprisingly to a lot of other people, eliminates, Ospreay from the semifinals entirely.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility of that. Again, we kind of talked about that on the preview show with Chris, that it kind of seems too obvious to have Will and Okada go out. And with Will being the U.S. champion, do you need him going into the quarterfinals where you can get somebody else in to kind of elevate the stock of somebody else? Obviously from a match quality standpoint and even from a star, drawing standpoint, I think having Ospreay advance to the quarterfinals would be the right move. But again, I could see them using a guy like Taichi, who's sitting at 6 points, to kind of be the underdog upset and slide in and get into that 2A spot. Well, since we're talking about Taichi, let's talk about him next. 3 wins, 2 losses, like you mentioned, he's at 6 points. Night 7, he lost to Kenta, and then on night 9, he defeated Yoshihashi. So like you're saying, yeah, he's in a prime spot to potentially squeak through and pull upset and get that 2A spot.
Yeah, the Kenta loss may potentially be something catastrophic for his G1 run. Hard to say, but it's not good. But he was able to best Yoshihashi in what I think is a pretty underrated match. I really enjoyed the match with Yoshihashi quite a bit. What's funny is I don't remember the Kenta match at this point.
Well, because it was just a bunch of shenanigans, pre-match they pulled Kanemaru. Right. They pulled Kanemaru off commentary, and they were,
titles.
Yeah, they were trying to see whose belt was better. So they'd raise up the KOPW belt, and then Kenta would raise up the Defy belt, and so that this whole back and forth trying to get the crowd to cheer between whose belt they thought was better, and that led to Kenta cheating, hitting a low blow, and beating Taichi in 2 minutes here.
Okay, well, maybe that's something important. Maybe it's just a way to get Kenta, a couple respectable points on the board. Who's to say? But Taichi having a very strong tournament. I do think that him, Yoshihashi, and ELP, who are all similar point totals, I think that those 3 guys are just a smidge below Ospreay and Okada in terms of overall tournament quality, but nonetheless having very good tournaments.
Yeah, Yoshihashi, Taichi, he's been killing it. Super hard hitting, really great matches. Yeah, he's been fun to watch this tournament.
Mm-hmm. And he's alive. And I think he has an outside shot of being the guy that goes through as 2A, possibly.
Yeah, so night 11, he has, let's see, where is he at? Taichi, he has ELP on night 11. And then on night 13, let's see, night 13 is an A block night. Night 14 is a B block night. Night 14, he has Great Okan.
Gotcha. And there's just 2 more nights left for these guys?
Yeah, they got 2 more matches left.
So basically, the guys with 4 points maybe are alive, but even if they won all their matches, they would end up at 8. They would need the perfect storm of events to transpire. And even then, they lost to Ospreay and Okada. So I'm guessing they're probably out, right?
Well, El Phantasmo, he's at 4. If he wins his next 2, he can get to 8. He has Ospreay on the last night. So he can beat Ospreay at the tiebreaker over Ospreay and advance.
So he's not totally done.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, this is one of those things where it's fuck. Again, I don't want to be Chris.
Next, also at 4 points, Yoshihashi, he's 2-3. Night 7, like we mentioned, he lost to Okada. Night 9, losing to Taichi, but very similar situation here. He's 2-3. He can end the tournament with 8 points, but let me see who he has left.
Well, he's already lost to Okada and he's already lost to Ospreay, so I don't think it really matters. Even if he were to win all the rest of his matches, he would only tie those guys, and he doesn't have any tiebreakers.
Yeah, he has Kenta and Okan left, so beating those guys is not going to do much for him.
Right. So I think even though like ELP might be alive, he's done.
Yeah. Yeah, ELP is lucky to have Osprey last night.
Yeah. But it wasn't for a lack of trying. Yoshihashi tried his best. I loved the Okada match. One of my favorite matches of the tournament. If you haven't watched it, I was thinking, Jeremy, we should do like a Josh and Jeremy Keeping It Strong Style mixtape, like Path to Greatness. What are the best, matches through the tournament for those who want to cherry pick it or whatever?
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
Only the tip top.
Yeah. There's a lot you can skip if you're cherry picking.
Yeah.
We had a question here from Hawaiian Punch BV. When do you think that Yoshihashi will get his long-awaited victory over Okada?
Bro, maybe never.
Yeah, I mean, the G1 is a perfect place where you can beat Okada, and I feel like everything was aligned for him. It was Korakuen Hall, a place where there's upsets all the time. Crowd was behind him. He's on a hot streak with the Bishamon run. I don't know. I feel like this should have been the year. Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he'll ever get that win. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a pretty tall task for him to do that at this point. So the next guy, El Phantasmo, like we mentioned, 2-3, 4 points. Night 7 defeating Tangaloa. Night 9 defeating Kenta in 19 seconds. But they had a pretty much a wild, crazy brawl for like 10 minutes and then got back into the ring. Match started and ELP was able to get the win.
Yeah, interesting the elements between Tangaloa and ELP, considering the fact that ELP was one of those who were part of the Bull Club when GOD were ousted from the group and he sort of turned on them. And even though El Phantasmo is sort of a man without a country right now, he's sort of mended the bridge between himself and Tangaloa. They had a good contest that he was able to come out on top. I thought it was one of Tangaloa's better matches in the tournament. And then the Kenta match, they did a great job on commentary, kind of highlighting how while they were brawling all throughout the crowd, and even though it wasn't part of the official match, Kenta had been able to secure his victory over Hikuleo for the strong title when he, defended it by beating him in a very similar situation, brawling through the crowd and using the environment tables to his advantage. And it kind of felt like maybe that would be what happened to ELP. But ultimately, even though he busted ELP open and even though, he was able to brutalize him, they got in that ring and 19 seconds later, ELP rolled him up 1, 2, 3, got the pinfall victory. Kenta was irate, jumped him after the bell, kept attacking him, but ELP's on a run. He's got 4 points and he is alive. And, maybe he's the guy that goes through, which I could also see being very plausible.
Yeah, he's definitely had this kind of comeback story. A lot of people are getting behind him at this point in the tournament. And yeah, again, with having Osprey on the last night, he really does control his destiny if he can win his last 2 matches. With the Kenta match, from a kayfabe perspective, how horrible of a call was that for Marty Asami? This guy is like busted open, gets rolled in the ring, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Start the match.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't try to even think too.
It was a horrible call.
Too critically about New Japan's officiating these days.
Oh,
it was bad.
Yeah, that was a bad call. But yeah, luckily ELP was able to get the win there. And speaking of Kenta, he's also 2-3, 4 points, defeating Taichi on night 7, and then like we just mentioned, losing to ELP on night 9.
Wow, I didn't even realize him and Tangaloa are both at 4 points. I guess they're technically possibly alive as well.
Well, Kenta has Okada coming up. So let's see.
I know Kenta lost to Osprey. So
yeah.
If he loses to Okada, he's done.
Yeah, so night 11 he has Okada. And then night 13, or night 14, he has Yoshihashi.
Does Tangaloa have? Did he already wrestle Okada and Ospreay, or does he have both of them in front of him?
Tangaloa night 11 has Ospreay, and then night 14 he has Okada.
Oh wow! So he hasn't fought either of them.
Yeah. So again, Tangaloa.
So Tangaloa's alive. Tangaloa's really alive right now.
Yeah, he controls his destiny. If he could beat Ospreay and Okada back to back,
if he beats Ospreay and Okada, he might go through.
Because then that would put him to 8, and then he would have the tiebreakers over both of them, and he would be 1A.
I'm dying right now. Okay. Anyways, yeah, man, I don't know. Kenta seems a lot less likely, and since we're just kind of throwing him in there too, Tangaloa, he's got control of his destiny, but one loss and he's out. So both these guys are in the chopping block, basically.
Yeah, I don't expect either of these guys to advance. Maybe they'll each get 6 points just to kind of make their total look a little bit better. But yeah, I think these guys are pretty much on you can give them pretty much one red X right now. They're on the chopping block. But yeah, Tangaloa, he like I said, he lost to ELP on night 7. He defeated the Great Okan on night 9. I guess we can just kind of lump all these guys all together. Great Okan, he has 2 points, 1 win, 4 losses. Like we mentioned, he lost to Ospreay on night 7, and then he lost to Tangaloa on night 9. Yeah,
and that match was pretty good. They definitely had some shenanigans on the outside, used the chair and everything like that, but Tangaloa was able to beat him. Anything I'd have to say about Great Okan at this point would be a retread of what I've said for several weeks, where it's just like, you hear the company has high hopes and aspirations for him, but then he's at the bottom of the block, and it's been years and years, and I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of head scratching the way that he's booked here. Like, he's the bottom man in the block, like below Tangaloa. I'm sorry, T, but I don't know, man. Like, the Great Okan, like, there's a lot of promise with him, and I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's something with him internally that there's this hole in the push up, or they're just not ready. I don't know what the deal is, but I feel like he's a guy that should be pushed harder, utilized more. Like, there's no reason why he couldn't be a guy that's at 4 or 6 points in this block.
Agreed.
So yeah, so he's out at this point. There's nothing that he can do to get through. He can just play spoiler for people and kind of ruin the end of the tournament for some folks. But yeah, this bottom of the block here. Yeah, I mean, Kenta, Tangaloa is still alive. Okan's out of there. So we'll see what these guys do in the next coming nights. So that'll take us to the C block. On top of that block, we have the never open weight champion, the Rebel David Finlay, 4-1, 8 points, night 8, taking his first loss of the tournament to Tama Tonga, 14 minutes and 22 seconds. And then on night 10, he rebounded by defeating Hanare, 11 minutes and 54 seconds.
Yeah, the match with Tama Tonga, a lot of history there, even just very recently between them fighting over the Never title, and Tama Tonga fought fire with fire, attacking him prior to the bell, and basically using as many heated and underhanded tactics as he possibly could to basically get the best of Finlay, and he was able to do that and kind of even up the score between them. And then the match with Hanare was kind of funny to see David Finlay versus Hanare in the C block after all these years.
Yeah, we know the long-running joke of those guys of their fictional C block back when G1 was only 2 blocks and they weren't in it, so they were kind of having their own side competitions from the undercard matches. So yeah, kind of some irony there. Both these guys competing against each other in the C block. But Finlay, I think he's been looking great. A lot of intensity. I had a buddy of mine who's kind of getting back in New Japan. He's like, man, this Finlay guy, like I didn't think he had it, but man, you were right. He's looking good. I'm buying him as a Bullet Club leader. And, he got his heat back after losing to Tama, hit him with the shillelagh and kind of laid him out at the end, and then getting the win over Hanare. So, yeah, he full steam ahead with Finley here. Any more comments on Finley?
No, I thought you were going to go into the question.
Dom Homie 101 says, is it me or does it seem like David Finley is fighting an uphill battle since becoming Bullet Club leader?
It's you. It's you, bro. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that feel that way, but I don't know. I watch the shows. And maybe, again, I'm not insinuating that someone who feels differently than me that doesn't watch all the shows, but I don't know, man. I watch all these shows and David Finley, he comes off like a really strong heel who brutalizes people and beats people up and, is pretty easy to hate. I think he's doing a great job. Is he Kenny Omega or is he Prince Devitt? No, he's David Finley. He's in this iteration of the Bullet Club. And one of the things we've been saying, it more than anything else, is that we've been talking about how they should just get rid of the group unless they want to change the group. And they're changing the group. And with that change comes a change in leadership and a change in attitude and perspective. I think for fans who view Bullet Club as what it was in 2016, David Finley's not going to work for them,
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those fans are watching AEW.
Right.
And it's why, I don't know, Bullet Club Gold works for them. Or they love the Elite. But for me, watching in 2023, a whole 10 years after the Bullet Club launched, David Finley works for me. He's having great matches,
Great promos.
Great promos. I don't get it.
Guys motivated. I think it's just the comparison thing. People see Bullet Club leader, they're going back, they're thinking, oh, this guy's not, a Prince Devitt, he's not an AJ Styles, he's not a Kenny Omega. And yeah, he's not going to live up to the quality of some of those guys, but he's David Finley. He's been making a name for himself. He's been having some great matches to his own right. Honestly, I don't think he's that far off from a Jay White. And
I don't either.
And also those guys came up in the dojo together and had a heated rivalry. But, a lot of people complain about, the Bullet Club shenanigans. But Finley, he's not really doing a lot of shenanigans. He's winning most of his matches clean just by beating the crap out of his opponents. So that stuff's not there. If this was Jay White, he'd be rolling out the ring, powdering, doing the fake, pass out thing. There's so much more shenanigans of Jay's matches that Finley's just not doing.
Listen, bro, if David Finley was taking over the Bullet Club hot off the heels of Kenny Omega's world title reign, right? I would have every complaint in the world. This doesn't make any sense. He can't fill the shoes. But coming off of Jay White and what we got the last few years of Jay White in New Japan, this is a breath of fresh air. I'm sorry. I like Jay White. I do. But bro, Jay White wasn't giving us the heat like David Finley is, a lot of Jay White's matches were, they were Jay White matches, which is there's a place you can watch him. I heard he had an hour-long tag team match recently. I haven't watched it, but they're out there. You can watch them. But give me a sub 20-minute David Finley hard-nosed,
just beating people up
match. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's been great. So speaking of Bullet Club, next guy here that's tied with Finley at the top of the block is Evil. So 4-1, 8 points. Night 8 defeating Hanare, and then night 10 defeating Tomohiro Ishii.
A lot of shenanigans, a lot of cheating. I don't have much to say. I don't give a fuck. It looks like Evil is going to be a big roadblock for Shingo on the final night still. So,
yeah, so clearly Evil very much alive. This has been the first time in a while he's being pushed heavily as a single since losing the World Heavyweight title a couple of years ago. And again, with that title win, we always say that at some points they have to push him just because of what they did with that decision in 2020. And so here we are, top of the block, lots of cheating, lots of shenanigans, especially in that Ishii match. It was egregious how much Dick Togo was interfering, and then him holding the referee while low blowing Evil, and then hitting the everything's Evil. So kind of sucks.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. But here he is on top of the block, and he has the potential to go through the quarterfinals here.
I just want to say before we move on, the C block has not been what I thought C block was going to be. Just want to throw it out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been advertised as like the hard hitting never block, which there has been some of that. But then you sprinkle in your Evil, you sprinkle in your Mikey Nichols, your Tamatongas. It's just not quite what it probably could have been.
Nah.
But speaking of Tamatonga, he's next guy here with 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw, 7 points. Like I mentioned, night 8 defeating David Finlay, and then night 10 went to the time limit draw with Shingo Takagi.
The David Finlay match, probably one of the best matches he's had in this tournament. He went to the draw with Shingo, and I don't know what the fuck was going on night 10. Night 10 just across the board just kind of sucked.
Yeah.
But this was probably the best match of the night, I'm guessing. I don't know, or one of them.
Yeah, I enjoyed. I thought a lot of people were kind of down this match. I enjoyed this match. I mean, it was a down night, but I think this was like a pretty good match.
The first draw in the tournament outside of A block, and it is very interesting because it's like, he's at 7. We'll get to Shingo, but he's at 5, and I'm not sure how that's gonna play into the math of everything. But 2 big time baby faces that were unable to best one another. But yeah, Tama's at 7 points. He's still very much alive. He's in this tournament, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Then Eddie Kingston, 3-2, 6 points. Night 8, he lost to Tomohiro Ishii in 16 minutes and 12 seconds. And then night 10, he defeated Mad Mikey Nichols, 8 minutes and 33 seconds.
Kingston, even when he's not having what you would classify as classic matches, he's putting all of his heart, soul, and effort into this tournament. There were a lot of questions about how he would fare from a physicality standpoint. He seems to be healthy and able to compete, and he's giving people his money's worth, their money's worth. The match with Ishii, quite possibly the best match of the tournament. Hard to say.
Incredible.
One of them, definitely up there. Surprisingly, Ishii picked up his first win of the tournament against a streaking Eddie Kingston. Hit him with the stalling brainbuster for the 1-2-3 at 16 minutes and 12 seconds. And then Eddie rebounded the next night by beating Mikey Nichols and, picking up the momentum.
Yeah, and interesting win there for Ishii. Obviously, Eddie Kingston is the strong open weight champion, so potentially that sets up a rematch for them somewhere in the future. There's some obviously some big AEW shows coming up. There is the Fighting Spirit Unleashed show in Las Vegas coming up, and I believe that's in September for New Japan. So they're in the U.S. So there's some spots there where Kingston could defend the strong title against Ishii in a rematch. So yeah, if you haven't seen that match yet, definitely watch that. That was your Never Style, fighting spirit banger. These guys throwing big chops, big lariats, kicking out at 1. And then, like you mentioned, Ishii able to get the vertical drop brainbuster on Eddie. And yeah, the Nichols match, it was there. Again, at that night 10, very similar vibes to night 6. Very low energy crowd, low energy matches. But it is what it was, and Eddie got the win. So a couple questions here. Les Commission 7252 says, would you guys compare the Ishii versus Kingston match to when Ishii faced Moxley 4 years ago in the G1?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. I guess in some sense, would I compare them in the context of like, would I, basically rate one match above one another? Maybe, but in terms of like, do I think they're comparable? I don't know in what you mean exactly in that manner.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he's getting at, but it's a little bit of a different scenario though, because obviously Eddie's already faced Ishii on
twice.
Yeah, New Japan US shows, and Mox versus Ishii, that was Mox's first time against Ishii, first time in Japan in G1,
Right.
seeing what that whole, like, how he's going to wrestle outside WWE was kind of a big deal.
That's what I was trying to articulate, but I couldn't find the words. That's exactly. That's why I was like, I don't know. I don't get it. But maybe what he means is like, this is the highlight of both of their G1s against Ishii. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no denying, like, they were both awesome matches.
Yeah. Then Rambone Slam Pig says, with a little more than half of the block matches done, what are your thoughts on how Eddie Kingston has performed? I'm a big fan of his and I'm very happy to see how he has hung in there and not looked out of place in the tournament as it grinds on.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking forward to the rest of his tournament. I think obviously the big end date for him is he's got a date on the final night with David Finlay, which, that's going to be very important.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought Eddie's been performing really well. I'll see. This is kind of his dream come true. You can see that when he's out there, he's having the time of his life out here, especially when he's in Cork and Hall and Ishii. He considers that place like, holy ground. And he just went out there and he's killing it. He's having a great tour. He's having a lot of fun. I'm happy for the guy. I'm glad he's able to do this tour. And I know there was some negotiating that had to be done to get him here, but yeah, he's doing great. So then after that, we got the Dragon, Shingo Takagi, 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. He's at 5 points. Night 8, defeating Mad Mikey Nichols. Night 10, defeating he had the time limit draw with Tama Tonga. So getting 1 point off of that draw. So Shingo is starting to kind of make a little rebound here.
If he wins his next 2 matches, he can end at 9 points. It's an outside chance, but he is alive, and maybe he goes through. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's clearly going to set up to be a guy that could be making it in because he's going against Evil on that last C block night. And so I think it's going to be a situation where probably the winner of that match is going to be your 2A. Obviously, Kingston and Tama could get it in there, but I feel like with the positioning, I think it's going to come down to Shingo and Evil.
Mm-hmm.
But Shingo, obviously, great performer. Some hard-hitting matchups here. Nothing super top level, but it's Shingo Takagi. He's going to be great every time he goes out there, so fun to watch in this tournament. Then next up, Hen Nare. 1 win, 4 losses. He's at 2 points. Night 8, losing to Evil. Night 10, losing to Dave Finlay.
Yeah, those 2 losses pretty much eliminated him, put him in a very precarious predicament. I think Hanare's had a great tournament in terms of just in-ring performance. And, last week we were singing a very different tune about where we could potentially see him. I think he's taken a great step forward in terms of presentation, ambiance, the aura, his actual work, but he's still sitting at 2 points at the end of, at this point in the tournament, which is not ideal.
Yeah, and again, a little bit of head scratching with him. I know he's never been super pushed, but he comes back. He has the Matadori tattoos on the face, new music, new look. He shaves the head. His whole kind of menacing look, and I feel like they're really kind of killing the aura here by just having him be at 2 points. I know, Evil beat him, but I don't know. I feel like he should have won a little bit more, or they should have put him in a different block where he could have won more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would have been the way to go, but this is where they see him. I don't know.
Yeah. So he's pretty much eliminated, and there's 2 other guys with 2 points that are out. Mad Mikey Nichols, he's also 1 and 4. Night 8, he lost to Shingo. Night 10, losing to Eddie Kingston, and then Tomohiro Ishii. Night 8, defeating Eddie Kingston. Night 10, losing to Evil. So Hanare, Nichols, Ishii, 2 points. They're all out.
Yeah.
So, Ishii, the Eddie match, like we mentioned, great matchup here. Also, Ishii, one of the, historical best G1 performers there is. Unfortunately, he got Evil on night 10, but I'm sure he'll give us some great stuff in his last 2 matches.
I think Ishii is still one of the best performers in this year's
He is, yeah.
Even though he's sitting at 1-4, like it's kind of crazy. But yeah, Nichols been fine. He's bled a lot. He's tried really hard. He's had some good performances, but you know, I don't know. I don't have that much more to say about them because they're out.
Yeah, the Shingo finish was a little weird where like they just kind of like collided almost in a Fez press kind of way, and Shingo just kind of pinned him off of that. That was kind of weird, but it was a hard-hitting matchup. Well, then let's wrap things up here with the D block. So on top of the block, we have two guys here that are 4-1, 8 points. First guy is Jeff Cobb, the Imperial Unit, night 8, defeating Zack Sabre Jr., 16 minutes, 16 seconds. And then night 10 got his first loss by Toru Yano in 1 minute and 49 seconds.
Yeah, so you follow up with what might arguably be his, well, maybe not his biggest, because he also beat Naito in the tournament, but one of his biggest wins in the tournament by beating Zack Sabre Jr. And the next night he gets beat by Jeff Cobb. And I was on
Yano.
by Yano. And I was on a Facebook group where someone was like, so you take Jeff Cobb, you have him go undefeated in the tournament, you haven't beat Naito, you haven't beat Zack Sabre Jr., but then the very next night, you have Toru Yano beat him. Make it make sense. And bro, whoever like wrote that got roasted by so many people. And they're like, this must be your first G1.
Man, this is what Yano does, man. He's a spoiler. He's the upset dude. As soon as I saw Cobb going into this match 4-0, I'm like, he's losing. He's losing to Yano here. And that's exactly what happened. You had to balance things out. It was the kind of the quick roll-up loss, and it makes total sense here. I was not upset about that.
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. Plus, unless they're planning to go with the monster push that they've given Cobb in the past, and quite admittedly, I wasn't sure how well he would do in this block, and he's leading the block at this point, which is fantastic. But a couple of years ago, he had a legendary run, and then last year he had kind of a subpar kayfabe run, and now he's back on top. Unless you're planning to do something like that again, it only makes sense that he'd probably eat a couple losses, and Yano is one of those guys where that's just what he can do. I thought the Sabre match was fantastic. I loved that he finally was able to beat Zach, but not under the 15-minute time limit, which has kind of been the Achilles heel of their feud because it's all been based around the TV title. And he still hasn't proven that he can beat him within the time limit, but he does have the goods to beat him, which is pretty much how their last match looked that it was heading at the end of it anyways.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time he's beaten Zack Sabre at all in any promotion.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so yeah, this year he had the time limit draw, and then the rematch at Dominion where he lost to Sabre. So yeah.
Oh, I said his last match. I meant the time limit draw. I apologize. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting the big win over Sabre, and that was big because coming into that match, both guys were 3-0. Both guys were undefeated. So he got the tiebreaker win here over Sabre, which will be very important coming down the stretch.
So yeah, he's got the win over Naito, and he's got the win over Zach. Who else does Jeff have for the remainder of the tournament?
Let's see here. On night 12, he has Hiroki Goto. And then let me see who he has after that, because I don't have it on the rundown since that's going to be the week after. Let's see here. Pull up the schedule.
Is it Tanahashi? Did he already beat Tanahashi?
No, it might be Tanahashi.
Okay.
Nope, not August 9th. It's, let's see, Tuesday, August 8th. Let's see, Jeff Cobb is... I know, actually, we're a deep block, right? So yeah, it would be Thursday, August 10th. Nope, Wednesday, August 9th. There we go, D block. He has Shane Haste on the last D block night.
Okay. Gotcha. So, I mean, unless something crazy happens, he's probably going through. Like, he hasn't totally locked it up, but he would need to lose, I'm guessing, both of those matches because he's got a tiebreaker against Zach and Naito.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, he could lose to Goto. I feel like that's a guy that could beat him, but then losing to Shane Hayes, I have a hard time seeing him lose to Shane Hayes. So I think well, Hayes did beat Naito, yeah.
Yeah, Shane got a big win. You never know, but I mean, he would need to, for him to not go through, he would need to lose both of his next 2 matches.
Right. So pretty much he has full control of his destiny. Yeah, if he loses those 2, he'll be stuck at 8, and then Saber and Naito could surpass him there.
Right, and they would probably both need to surpass him, basically. And Tanahashi's not necessarily dead either.
Right. Yeah, Ace still alive with 6 points.
So Cobb's leading, but it's his block to lose at this point.
Yeah. Then Zack Sabre Jr., like we said, he's 4-1 also. Night 8, like we mentioned, losing to Cobb. And then night 10, he rebounded by defeating his TMDK stablemate, hysterical Shane Hayes.
Loved the match with Cobb. I thought the match with Shane Hayes was pretty good. Zach, I think what we're all waiting for is the big match between him and Naito on the final night.
Yeah, obviously that's also going to be a big deal, and that's probably going to be who's going to get in, I'm guessing, 2A if Cobb kind of goes through and Cobb's 1A. But somehow that match is going to be whoever wins that Sabre Naito is probably the one getting through. Since we're talking about Naito, he's at 6 points, 3-2. Night 8 had the big upset loss to Shane Hayes. Night 10 rebounded by defeating Alex Coughlin. So yeah, Naito, he has 2 matches left where he could get to 10 points. And so he can go into that last match with Sabre at 8 points. And so put himself in good position to advance.
Night 8 was one of my favorite nights of the G1 so far, and it was one of the few nights where we had a lot of surprising results, and Cobb beating Sabre was one of those, and then even more so, Shane Hayes beating Naito was really shocking. He fucking laid the smackdown on that dude, which is always fun. So
yeah, I mean, and the whole story of that match, yeah, Naito was taking Shane Hayes very lightly. There was some comments earlier in the interviews where he's like, I don't understand why a guy like Shane Hayes is in the tournament. And so, yeah, Shane was able to hit the Bomb Valley Death and get the big upset win.
Yeah.
So then Hiroshi Tanahashi, he's also at 6 points. He's 3-2 night 8, defeating Toru Yano. Night 10, defeating Hiroki Goto.
Yeah, Tanahashi's not out. And I wouldn't be completely surprised if it seems unlikely now, but what if Cobb loses his next 2 and Tanahashi wins his next 2 and surpasses Cobb's 8 points to end up with 9, or 10?
Yeah,
essentially.
And it could happen. I mean, night 12, he has Alex Coughlin. And then on the 9th, he has Tetsuya Naito. So there's a good chance for Tanahashi there.
Wait, he has Naito? I thought Naito was fighting Sabre on the final night.
Let's see. So it looks like Sabre's actually facing Goto.
You know what? I messed that up. It's the second to last night when they face each other.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, last night Sabre has Goto, and then Tanahashi has Naito on the last night.
Then that kind of changes some of my projections. I still think I got Naito and Sabre going through together. I think that was always what I thought was going to happen, and I think it probably still could happen. But Tanahashi's alive. You just never know.
Yeah, it could win it in a snap. Then we got some guys here that are at 4 points. We have Hiroki Goto, who's 2-3 with 4 points. He lost to Alex Coughlin on night 8. Night 10, he lost to Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then Shane Hayes, he on night 8 defeated Tetsuya Naito, the big upset. And then night 10, losing to Zack Sabre Jr.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else here is pretty much just playing spoiler. Like they're virtually eliminated essentially. And Goto's been fine, but I haven't felt like any truly classic Goto performances that you expect in a G1.
Yeah, which makes me think that the rib injury is a shoot. Like I think he's really hurt because a lot of his matches have either been short or he's been struggling really hard, and maybe he's just a master worker and seller, and he said, "Hey, kid, I want to sell the ribs this tournament." But I think he's really hurting.
He worked a long main event with Tanahashi though.
Yeah, but I don't know. He still was kind of moving rough there in that match, and I felt bad for him. That high fly flow at the end, I feel like Tanahashi was trying not to land on his ribs, but instead landing right on his face.
Yes, definitely.
Then the last two guys here, there are 2 points. We have Alex Coughlin. Night 8 he defeated Goto. Night 10 losing to Naito. And then Toru Yano, night 8, he lost to Tanahashi. Night 10 defeating Jeff Cobb. So they're both at 2 points, and they're out. Double Red X mathematically eliminated.
Yeah. And I mean, essentially like Yano has been just playing comedy. He picked up the big win over Jeff Cobb. That was unexpected. Coughlin, more character work, more hard hitting. He's doing everything in his power to get over and have a great tournament. I feel like Shane Hayes is kind of in a similar position as well. Both guys doing a lot to, basically salvage their tournaments, even though they're being booked into oblivion. But, Coughlin hasn't really had that breakthrough match just yet. I know he beat Goto, but there is that asterisk of the rib injury. It didn't feel like a definitive, meaningful win, even though on commentary they mentioned how it could have tag team title implications. But Shane, on the other hand, he had the big win over Zack Sabre Jr. Or I'm sorry, not Zack, Naito, which was like he fucking beat him like definitively, and that happens in the G1 from time to time. But it was pretty cool when it happened.
Yeah, and the Sabre match was great. I mean, it was a pretty close match there.
Yeah.
So that wraps up the block coverage. Has some other G1 questions here. I'll run through these pretty quickly. So Les Commission 7252 says, what block would have liked to have been a part in if y'all were announced for the G1?
None. No block. Pay me to do this. Talk about the G1.
I mean, if I was a wrestler, I'd probably want to be in that B block, get your Okada match, get your Ospreay match, get put on the map. His other question is, with New Japan surprisingly being different with their booking, would a returning Carl Gotch Cup round robin tournament be fitting for the Young Lions this year?
I don't think the Young Lions Cup is the Carl Gotch Cup, is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's the name of it. But I mean, I like the Young Lions Cup when it's fitting, and maybe it is this year. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's some young lions there. Obviously, you got Nakashima, Oscar Lube, Bolton Oleg, Oiwa. So there's some guys there, and there's probably some more students there. There's some guys in the Fale dojo that could probably bring over. So you could probably do one. Next question from CJH1998 says, what Gaijin who has never competed in the G1 would you pick to replace one competitor in this year's G1, and who would they have replaced?
What?
So if you got to pick one foreigner that can replace somebody in the G1 who's never been in the G1, who would you pick?
I don't know. Like probably Brian.
Yeah, Brian Danielson would be my answer. And let's I don't know. Let's take Chase Owens out and put Brian in.
Yeah, that's fine.
His other question, which unlikely result is more interesting to you? ELP defeating and advancing over Will Ospreay, or Kingston defeating and advancing over Dave Finlay?
I think ELP advancing is more interesting and also more likely than Kingston advancing over David Finlay. And I don't think it's that interesting if it were to happen.
Yeah, and I think just from a booking perspective, ELP's your guy that's going to be there the remainder of the year. Once Kingston's done with G1, he's going back to AEW. So I don't think having him beat Finlay, a guy that you're pushing super hard to get Kingston to the quarterfinals, I don't think that's the best booking strategy there. Next question from DJ_Aftershock. Opinions on the increased amount of time limit draws this year?
I mean, the shows are all going 3 hours, so it's not really been a huge deal. Obviously, we don't need to rehash, the ins and outs of the 20-minute time limit.
Yeah, I mean, for A Block, I think it's been good to help tell stories there. It's been used as a good storytelling device overall.
I agree.
Next question here from Def Triangle 720. What do you think about Sonata's booking as champion in the G1? I feel like we've kind of covered that already. I mean, he's undefeated. He's been pushed pretty heavily. Next question here. I am Cass Tedder. What are your thoughts on the 32-man format so far? I like how they're able to showcase more talent and get more quality matches from the tournament. Plus, the format is a huge improvement from the 28-man field last year. However, a bloated field does create G1 fatigue, so I understand that mindset as well. What all would you change for next year's format to improve the tournament?
Yeah, so this is actually something I wanted to touch on, but I did. We've had a lot to talk about. I've seen some people complaining about the format this year and talking about how they just need to go back to 20 or they should have just done 20, right? Mm-hmm. So I started looking at like a 20-man format field and I was like, okay, well, who could we get rid of? And there's like 4, maybe 5 names that you could just easily eradicate, like boom. Okay, that's easy. But then it's like, you still need to have 12 names eradicated out of a 32 field. You get rid of 4. Now you have 8 really tough choices to make. And you know what you end up with? You end up getting rid of probably the outsiders, so Kiyomiya and Kingston, and you probably end up getting rid of one of 2 things. Either older names that you're not ready to maybe get rid of, or young names that you're not entirely sure deserve to be in the tournament. But one of the things that they're being praised for in this year's tournament is the inclusion of the young blood. So then, and yeah, you could get rid of like a Yano, obviously, like he's on the block, people like that. If you wanted to get, smarky with it, you get rid of an Evil, even though he's like a high up name. But like realistically, if you're New Japan and you're Gato, you probably cut the outsiders, you probably cut the young men. And then when you start looking at the field that you actually have left, once you get rid of like the exciting aspects of it, it's not quite as compelling a G1 with 20 men as you think it would be, mm-hmm. Unless you start making some big cuts that people aren't ready for emotionally, like a Kenta,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
People like that. You got to cut an Evil. You got to cut a Kenta. You got to cut a Goto.
Yeah, Goto.
You got to cut a Tanahashi to get a lean and mean 20 that you're excited about. You got to cut some of those names. And maybe that's the right way to go about it, but that's not necessarily their MO.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I like the new format. I think all the fatigue we mentioned earlier is just having, 2 blocks on one night, but overall for the schedule, I think that's the way they have to do it. I think the one change you guys got to do is those guys that you mentioned that you can cut, like replace those guys with some better guys. If you have some better workers in there, I think you'll have overall better cards and a better tournament.
The 32-man tournament so far to me has been better than 28, but not as good as some of the best 20-man tournaments. But we've had some 20-man tournaments where like the blocks weren't even and it wasn't as consistent as this tournament has been. Yeah. So again, with them transitioning and needing to elevate stars, this has been a great format.
Yeah. Hawaiian Punch BV says, do you think that the vets in D Block are bored of wrestling each other, but when they wrestle Haste and Coughlin, they get more excited in putting them over.
I don't know, but that's an interesting theory.
Yeah, I mean, the wrestling really hasn't come off that way, but maybe. Lazy Binger says, what's your take on having one of the blocks end up in an unbreakable tie? Should they do it? Maybe do it for the A and B block so that the extra match to break the tie could happen on either C block night or D block night, and maybe bump up ticket sales a bit.
I don't know anymore what the tiebreaker would be if they had an unbreakable tie. I know what they have postulated in the past for other round robin tournaments, but I'm not sure. Maybe that'd be a cool idea, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit too convoluted and probably too much effort to book it out that way and then do this whole extra match. Yeah, I think let's just have a clear 1 and 2 winner. Don Homie 101 says, are Bullet Club War Dogs your dogs for real? Thoughts on the G1s? Thoughts on the G1s of Gabe Kidd and Alex Coughlin?
I've talked a lot about both of their G1s, and it's, I'd be rehashing old territory, but they are my dogs for real, and I'm a big fan, and I'm looking forward to what the future has for them.
Yeah, both guys are great. Love them. Love the theme song. And yeah, I think that they're doing a great job of establishing themselves in this G1 and kind of laying the foundation for what they can do in the future. Then last question here from Barry Walsh. Do you think the War Dogs are more over as a group than any one individual is in said group? The reactions seemed good to each of them, but not enough. I expected them to be the top t-shirt sellers last month in Japan. Is it possible the group seems cool to people without the attention on one clear individual? It just seems to me like end result is higher than the sum of the parts. Am I wrong with my assumptions?
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a wrong assumption. There doesn't seem to be a breakout star from the group, and maybe that's one of the criticisms about David Finlay. There's not one individual that is the make or break guy, but the group as a whole is very over. They mentioned that on commentary that they're the number one t-shirt merch seller in Japan right now, which kind of throws a little bit of salt on some of those reports about them not being over in Japan that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But, I think it's still the early goings of this iteration. It just started.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll add people, and we haven't seen Maloney and Connors in a while, so there's so much more to do with these guys.
Nice. Well, that's going to do it for our review of the tournament so far, and thank you again for all the questions. This coming week, we have New Japan G1 Climax 33 Night 11 coming up on Tuesday, August 1st in Takamatsu City Gymnasium. We have the matches between Kiyomiya Hikuleo, Yoshihashi Great-O-Khan, Chase Owens and Ren Narita, Taichi and El Phantasmo, Sonata versus Gabe Kidd, Tangaloa versus Will Ospreay, Umino versus Tsuji in the semi-main event, and your main event, Kenta versus Okada. Anything tickling your fancy there, Jeremy?
I think Umino and Tsuji is going to be one to definitely watch out for. Kenta and Okada can be great if we get maybe 2019 Kenta.
Yeah, and he'll definitely be motivated in the main event with Okada, but I think Umino and Tsuji is probably, for me, the number one match to look out for. I also think even if there aren't a lot of matches that are necessarily like, oh, that looks notebook, because of where we're at in the tournament, like Tangaloa, Will Ospreay, big stakes, Sonata, Gabe Kidd,
ELP and Taichi is probably going to be a big one to watch for their point totals.
That one too. Yep. Moving on, we have Night 12, Wednesday, August the 2nd in Hiroshima Sun Plaza. Tanahashi takes on Alex Coughlin. Nichols versus Evil. Yano versus Shane Haste. Ishii versus Sonare. Goto versus Jeff Cobb. Eddie Kingston versus Tama Tonga. Semi-main event, Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. And then your main event, Shingo Takagi versus David Finlay.
Man, there's some good ones on this one. Obviously, Naito and Sabre, they have a history of great matches, and that's going to be a very important matchup there. And then Shingo and Dave Finlay, big main event there. Shingo could really, kind of set himself in a good position if he can beat Finlay.
He needs that win. That's a make or break one for him. That's a huge one to look out for. Naito and Zach always have great matches. Eddie and Tama Tonga is very precarious as well. Because Tama has that tie with Shingo. He needs the win over Eddie, but Eddie, I mean, that's a huge match as well.
Yeah.
Some big stuff there. Saturday, August 5th from Eddie and Arena in Osaka, Japan, night 13. We got that's where we're starting to move to regular tournament format, huh?
Yep.
Okay. So Tama Tonga, Tangaloa, and Hiroshi Tenzan will take on Okada, Ishii, and Tanahashi. Second match of the night, there will be a tag team match. ELP and Togi Makabe versus Hinari and Will Ospreay. Bushi, Shingo, and Naito will take on Evil, Sho, and Yujiro. Goto, Yo, and Yoshihashi take on David Finlay, Gato, and Kenta. And then the last match of the undercard, Okan and Jeff Cobb take on Doki and Taichi. These final four matches, which are block matches, the order will be announced at a later date. And that's how it's going to remain for the rest of the tournament when it comes to tournament matches. So on that night for A block action, we have Sonata versus Chase Owens, Kiyomiya versus Ren Narita, Shota Umino versus Hikuleo, and then Gabe Kidd versus Yota Tsuji.
I think from a in-ring standpoint, probably Gabe Kidd and Tsuji is probably going to be the one to look out for on that night.
Not for me. I'm looking most forward to Kaito Kiyomiya versus Ren Narita because, again, Kiyomiya, it's his tournament, but Ren Narita is looking to play spoiler, and their styles, to me, match up so well.
Yeah, I think Umino and Hikuleo is probably going to be a big one there just for points-wise. So, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting night because a lot's going to determine, this is the final night. It's going to determine who's going to go through. A lot of guys are very close here.
Yeah, so by the time we record next week, we'll know who's going through from A block, and then we'll get to night 14. We'll know who's going through from B block as well, so it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
Night 14, Sunday, August 6th from Eddie and Arena, Osaka. On the undercard, you got Bushi, Shingo, Naito, and Tsuji taking on all four members of House of Torture. Eddie Kingston and Togi Makabe take on Chase Owens, David Finlay. Tenzan and Tama Tonga take on Hinari and Jeff Cobb. Tanahashi and Ishii teaming up together. Dream team. Taking on Fujita and Nichols. And then Kiyomiya and Oiwa take on Doki and Sonata. And then at the top of the card for B block action, Taichi will take on Great Okan. ELP will take on Will Ospreay. Okada will take on Tangaloa. And Kenta versus Yoshihashi. I'm assuming, just my opinion, I think Phantasmo and Ospreay probably main events that night.
Yeah, that seems to be the most sense. And then, the winner goes through.
And that's the match I've got, circled the most, personally.
Oh, yeah, that's probably going to be, by a long shot, the big standout on that night. Also, I do find it interesting. They might kind of spoil themselves here. They have Kiyomiya and Sonata on opposite ends on a tag match following.
And that kind of tells you, Kiyomiya is probably going to be the guy that goes through, and then you got him and Sonata.
Yeah, and that's going to be the preview for their quarterfinal match.
Because where's Shooter?
Let's see. He's not on the undercard for this one.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, that's going to do it for the preview. Let's jump into the news here. So, New Japan World filmed a feature that hasn't been released yet where Eddie Kingston got to meet his idol, Toshiaki Kawada. According to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the best-selling t-shirt in New Japan right now is Bullet Club War Dogs. New names announced for the All-Star Junior Festival: Robbie Eagles, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, TJP, Low Rider, Ace Austin, Rich Swann, and he didn't list them here, but the ace of the Sai Dojo, Matt Seidel.
That's right, yeah, Matt, back in New Japan.
Matto, new match for All-Star Junior Festival, Philly Cheesesteak Cup 3-way tag team ladder match. Rocky Romero and Hiromu Takahashi take on Doki and Low Rider as they take on Blake Christian and Master Wato. Who is Low Rider?
He's some dude from the Mexican Indies, one of Doki's boys. Doki used...
Oh, then he's Raw.
use his his pull to bring in one of his boys, bringing in Lowrider here.
Nice. Multiverse United 2, for whom the bell tolls, August 20th. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Alex Shelley has been announced for the Impact World Championship. So Tanahashi going to be the new TNA champ. Let's go. CMLL World Grand Prix Tournament will be taking place on August 18th. The annual tournament features 8 foreign wrestlers and 8 Mexican wrestlers. The foreign team is Balian Aki from India, Francesco Akira from Italy, Adrian Quest from the U.S., and TJP from the Philippines, as well as Rocky Romero from the U.S., Samurai Del Sol from the U.S., Kushida from Japan, and Hiromu Takahashi from Japan. The Mexican wrestlers that are going to appear are Averno, Rojo Jr., Angel de Oro, Templario, Ultimo Guerrero, Mascara Dorada 2.0, Volador Jr., and Mystico. And then the final bit of news here, Hiromu Takahashi will work for Michinoku Pro against Fujita Junior Hayato on October 15th, which is it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So a couple fight questions here, and then we'll go to a recommended match of the week, wrap the show up. So first from Hawaiian Punch BV, did you check out the Geiji Poirier 2? Should Salt Lake City be renamed Head Kick City after Edwards and Gaethje's KOs?
So Jeremy, maybe you can weigh in more on this, because like I was out. All right. I know we're at the end of the show, but like, so I went to Press Box in Tampa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have you been there with me before?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it's like a big boxing venue. Like they show a lot of they used
to show a lot of WWE pay-per-views back in the day there.
They used to show WWE there, yeah. Have you been there for that?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? So
I've been to Press Box, yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay. So everyone that was there to watch boxing, right? So they play the boxing and they're playing UFC at the same time, but the UFC is on the smaller TVs, and then on the big TVs they've got the boxing going, and they're playing the audio of the boxing pay-per-view. Well, the boxing pay-per-view starts at 8. UFC starts the main card pay-per-view at 10. So by the time Spence and Crawford is over, you've still got the main event of UFC going. And they switched over the audio, and they switched over the main TV in the middle of Crawford doing his post-match promo. And all these fucking old head boxing fan fucking assholes started booing loudly, like belligerently. And like the manager's like, we still got a UFC main event. We got to, and I'm like, bro, the only reason I agreed to pay a $20 cover charge is because you're showing both shows. And then the people complained so loud, they switched it back. So we had to sit there and watch the interview, and the entire first round of Gaethje and Poirier was like airing, but not on the big TVs, and there was no audio. And then finally, and like, bro, we were like screaming. There's people like, switch it back, and like they wouldn't switch it back. I was so pissed. Then they switched it back, and then the second round starts going, and Gaethje just fucking head kicks him. I'm like, what the fuck happened? I don't even know how good the match was.
It was pretty good. Also, it wasn't as good as their previous fight. Yeah, that was more of a slugfest back and forth. But the first round, Gaethje was really good with the leg kicks, and it was kind of a pretty good back and forth there. But then that second round, he just comes out, and he just throws that head kick, and same way that Edwards did to Usman, and same city, and just boom, dropped him.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. I couldn't believe it, but you just never know.
Then he also asked thoughts on Naoya Inouye's and Terrence Crawford's dominant performances. Should Errol Spence Jr. forget about the rematch, or will his pride be too hurt to do that?
Yo, that's the funny thing about, I'm so shocked. I was so shocked at the Terrence Crawford Errol Spence fight. Like, I did pick Bud to win. I did. But I felt like I was picking him based on like my gut instinct that he had more experience, and, he was better with angles, better counter fighter. But I was like not that confident. I was like 50 point, 1% confident and like 49.9% like not, so it was very very much on the peripheral. And he just fucking dominated Errol Spence. And like, I don't know, man. I'm hearing all sorts of different stuff. Like, I'm hearing people talk about Errol Spence being weight drained. I'm hearing people talk about him having a detached retina and him concealing all these injuries from that car crash that he had a few years ago where he almost died. And the whole thing where he had to drop out of the Manny Pacquiao fight because of the detached retina, and no one like really said too much about it. I don't know. There's a lot of excuses. But what I do know is Terrence Crawford went out there and fucked this man up bad in a shocking fashion. I mean, he literally like fucked him up bad. He dropped him 3 times. I cannot remember. I mean, when you talk about 2 dudes in their supposed prime at the top of the sport in a dream match scenario, very often it is not this one lopsided. And even if it is, it's very rare that they just fuck them up. Like, you're talking about a short list of fights, like Mike Tyson going out and starching Mike Spinks, or like Calzaghe ruining Jeff Lacey, stuff like that. Like, it's pretty rare. And putting all the excuses aside, I think the things that Crawford did that just ruined Errol Spence was, number one, he fought him southpaw the whole time, and Errol Spence doesn't have that much experience against fighting a dominant southpaw. He beat him with the jab, and for all the talk about Errol Spence's quote unquote power, if you watch his whole career, he's never been a one hitter quitter. He's been a guy that is aggressive, that puts pressure on people, and it's an accumulation of damage. That's why he stops people. And once his jab got taken away, and once he wasn't able to put any pressure on him, what tools did he have? He didn't have the game plan to adjust on the fly, whereas Terrence Crawford just picked him apart with counter punching, beating him into the jab, and just being the smoother, more composed fighter. It was, I felt, bro, I almost wanted to cry for Errol Spence when it was all said and done. I couldn't believe, I very rarely have I seen a elite fighter decimated this way.
Wow.
Anui knocked out Fulton. Monster is just, he's a fucking monster.
There's some other questions about him from Donovan 101. The thoughts on the Monster Inouye versus Stephen Fulton fight. Thoughts on Inouye's speed and pure boxing ability. How far can the Monster go in terms of weight classes? What is the ceiling for Monster Inouye? What went wrong with Stephen Fulton? What's next for Stephen Fulton?
I don't want to speak too much about Stephen Fulton, an undefeated fighter who got knocked out in a great, he did his best, but Monster's on a different level. A lot of people didn't think Inouye would be able to take his power up to that weight class, and he clearly did. I don't think his frame can go very much further in terms of weight classes. I mean, I think this is his 4th weight class. There's people wanting to see him go all the way up to, I'm hearing people now saying like he needs to go up to lightweight and fight like Tank and stuff, and that's absurd. I don't think he has the size for it at all. But if they did fight, it would have to be at some sort of crazy catch weight in between lightweight and bantamweight. But who knows? Maybe featherweights in the future. I don't know. But I mean, he's incredible. He's incredible. I don't know what's next for Stephen Fulton, but like Monster's the man, bro. Right now, he's the fucking man.
Then his other question was talking about Crawford versus Spence. We kind of answered part of that, but the last thing here he says, is Terrence Crawford the greatest fighter of his era, and did he take this era away from Canelo?
No. I mean, bro, like it's hard to. I see a lot of people that put a lot of hate on what Canelo has accomplished, but I mean, you look at just go look at the records of the guys that Canelo beat. Canelo beat like a lot of the best guys that came before him, and then a lot of his contemporaries, and then a lot of the guys that were younger than him. And he did it undersized, rising up in weights, and a lot of if you look at like the last like 10 fighters that he fought, their record is something absurd. It's like 300 and like 6-1 or something like that. I don't know. It's something crazy. So no, I don't think he takes away Canelo's, claim to being the best fighter of his era or anything like that. But I do think with this victory, it puts Crawford in the conversation for best welterweights of his era. He's clearly the best welterweight that we've seen fighting since Floyd Mayweather. And, it puts to rest the entire argument about him and Errol Spence. And I don't think there's really anything left for Crawford to do at welterweight. And I think junior middleweight is the only thing that makes sense for him moving forward, unless he wants to fight one of these young guns, at the weight class. But he beat everybody pretty much.
Nice. Well, now let's wrap things up with a recommended match of the week. So last week I had the recommended match of the week, recommended Tanahashi versus Tenzan from the 2004 G1.
I don't know if I've seen this G1 final. I know that I've seen the finish of it, and I know I've heard reviews of it. I feel like maybe I watched it once before. Did you watch it, Jeremy?
Yeah.
This blew me away. This was so much better than I thought it was going to be. When I looked at reviews and ratings and scores, I was expecting it to be pretty good. But to me, I thought this match was much better than what people are giving it credit for, just from a historical perspective. Very little downtime. There's very little like grappling and wrestling at the beginning of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like when you talk about work rate, fast-paced, action-packed match, that's what this was. It was boom, 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 boom. They're just going. And it's a story of Tenzan being the dark ace of the company, this bruiser, this unlikely. He doesn't fit into the mold of like your Nagatas and your Inokis and your Mutos and that sort of thing. But he's like one of the most popular guys in the company. But he's like a never style bruiser. And then you got Tanahashi, who's youth, athleticism, agility. And it's a match between speed and agility and experience and rough-necked ruggedness. And Tanahashi puts up a hell of a fight, and he's flying around and he's doing everything that he does. And then Tenzan is brutalizing him with headbutts and chops, and they're just going back and forth. And it is just boom, 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 boom. Like it's not from a modern standard what you would expect from a G1 Climax final match, but the ending of the match is very, very dramatic in what you'd expect from a G1 Climax. Like these guys start hitting all their big, like they go for a sprint, and then once the sprint is over, they just start throwing all their bombs at one another. And Tanahashi, at the time, like his two big moves were the big German suplex and the dragon sleeper, and he's using those to try and put Tenzan away. Tenzan hits him with Tenzan tombstone driver. He hits him with a moonsault. Tanahashi kicks out of all that. Tenzan's kicking out of all of Tanahashi's big stuff. They're countering everything that one another does to each other. It's just going back and forth. There's so many times where the match feels like it's ending and they keep kicking out of each other's stuff, and the crowd is just becoming roarious. And then finally at the very end, after several Tenzan tomb drivers and a moonsault, he finally puts Tanahashi in the Anaconda Vice. And Tanahashi had already countered several other Anaconda Vices, and he keeps standing up, and then Tenzan's slamming him back to the mat like a GTO, and then he gets back up and he slams him with another GTO, and I'm like, oh my god, I just want Tanahashi to get out so bad, and then finally he's not able to, and he has to tap out, and it's like, and the crowd goes crazy. Like, I love this match. Like, I don't know, like I'm probably higher than other people. I'm like 4.5. I think this match is incredible.
Yeah, it's a great match. Yeah, I think a lot of people are very low on it, and I don't know if that's like going back and watching like Tenzan. People have a kind of idea of Tenzan in their head, but Yeah, overall, that was a really great final. And, that was like what, Tanahashi's like what, third or fourth, maybe G1.
Maybe.
So good stuff from early Ace. So yeah, that was a really fun matchup there.
If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Then for the excursion match, you recommended Rocky Romero, our good friend, against Volador Jr. from the CMLL Fantastica Mania show from June 30th. And this was also a great match. If you love moves, if you love flips, if you love dive, this is the match for you. Volador started this thing off hot. He had a big suicide dive when Rocky was still making his entrance to the ring. So from there, they're starting out and just back and forth, Hurricane Ranas, big moves, big dives. Volador's that big over the top tope con hilo. Really a lot of good back and forth there. Then about 14 minutes in the match, Rocky does a Rana to Volador into the pole, but then Volador counters back, throws Rocky's shoulder into the pole. At this point, the crowd is they're doing the wave. I don't know if it's a normal thing they do in the CMLL, but the crowd was doing the wave, but they were definitely into the match. So from there, you had a lot of great back and forth striking. Then they were back outside, and Volador hits this big superplex to Rocky onto the floor. And I know you've mentioned how much it sucks to land on the floor even when there's padding, and so that CMLL floor looks very thinly padded, and they took this big superplex spot off the guardrail to the outside, and that I know Rocky was probably feeling that the next day. So that was cool. Back in the ring, Volador hits a big destroyer, and it looks like Volador had the match won, and then he was going on top. He was probably going to try for a Spanish Fly or something, but then Rocky countered the big super flying armbar off the top rope. Volador is fighting. He's trying to get out of it. He's fighting. But then finally, Rocky rolls through again, pulls back on the armbar, and Volador taps. Rocky gets a win. Awesome matchup here for our good friend Rocky Romero.
What would you go ratings-wise in that match?
I'd probably go 4 1/4, 4.5. I don't know, somewhere in the middle. 4.33.
Okay, so pretty high on that one.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think the first match they had was probably better, but this was great too.
Okay, good to know. Well, this week I have the recommended match of the week, and I am going with a little bit of a deep cut. This is from day 5 of the 1993 G1 Climax. It is currently the highest rated match on Cage Match for New Japan in 1993. Jeremy, what kind of rating do you think we're looking at from a match from 1993 on Cage Match?
Maybe 4.5.
No, from a Cage Match rating.
I guess like a 8.5 maybe.
We're looking at a 9.55 rating on Cage Match with 28 valid votes. So not a small amount.
Wow.
Hiroshi Hase versus Masahiro Chono from day 5 of the G1 Climax, August 6th, 1993. Now, I feel like this is a match that does get overlooked because it's not during the finals of the tournament, but it's definitely the best match of the 1993 G1 Climax. And if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I think we'll have the link for the show notes or whatever. But yeah, Jeremy, you're gonna fucking love this match.
Nice. Then for the excursion match of the week, we're going to go to Impact Slammiversary from July 15th of this year. Ultimate X match, Jonathan Gresham versus Kushida versus Speedball, Mike Bailey versus Jake Something versus Alan Angels versus Kevin Knight.
Nice.
Well, that's going to wrap things up for us here this week. Next week, we'll be back to review nights 11 through 14 and give our previews for the quarterfinals. So if you enjoyed today's show, please consider making a donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure to connect with us on social media. On Twitter, I guess I should say on X, we are at KI Strong Style. You can follow the network at Social Suplex. You can follow me at Jeremy L. Donovan on Facebook, facebook.com/Social Suplex. Find us in the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group. On Instagram and Threads, we are at KI Strong Style. You can also follow us at Social Suplex. On Reddit, I am the Pro Black Guy, just Keeping It Strong Style. Email me, Jeremy at socialsuplex.com. Check out our YouTube channel, Social Suplex Podcast Network. And check out all the shows that we have here on the network. One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. All Things Elite, hosted by Floyd Johnson Jr. and Austin Sumowitz. And The Wrestling Disaster, hosted by Danny Kugler. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. And we'll catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
It's your bond, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.